football folks doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
Hey, as a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right. We're going team by team.
I would be very careful about slinging stone.
Am I going to get sued?
We got legal on this?
I like football season, and all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live here on a Monday morning. It's time again. It's time again.
Just another time.
I did it again, man. Week 5, all sorts of stuff to talk about. Nice short week, so only be about 3.5 to 7 hours here. We got this. We're going to review all the Week 5 action. Sam, how you doing, man?
Not bad, Steve. How about you?
Doing great. You're coming. Your Monday morning mood is directly correlated to Ireland's rugby performance, and I know they had a dominant outing that no one wants to hear about.
Yep, not even hiding it. Absolutely, my mood is 100% direct correlation to whether we won or lost.
Yeah,
next week, quarterfinal, so could go south in a hurry.
You're usually miserable every single Monday morning, except like the 2 or 3 weeks a year where you got a little rugby win. So, congratulations to you. Of course, you and Brad were here Friday morning breaking down the Bears' big 40-20 victory over the Washington Commanders from Thursday Night Football. So you and I, we're going to get into the Sunday action. You ready to go?
One game done.
There we go.
Check it off.
We are cruising. We're out of here by 9. We got this. All right, Jacksonville Jaguars, 25. Buffalo Bills, 20. The Jags move to 3-2. The Bills fall to 3-2. The second straight London game for the Jags, and they come away 2-0 from their trip across the pond, where, by the way, Urban Meyer was undefeated across the pond. Over in England for all of his faults. Undefeated once they crossed the Atlantic. Urban Meyer era.
Yeah. Well, there was always the joke, right, that it's like the London Jags. You know, they're the team that's going to move. They're going to be – maybe they should.
Don't do it.
Undefeated over there.
Don't bring it up to poor Jags fans. But this was just a fascinating game. The Jags get up early. They're cooking early. Score a touchdown. There's an Ed Oliver roughing the passer that prolongs their first drive. And then there's an Ed Oliver penalty on the extra point, right? That gave on the touchdown that gave them the ball at the 1. The Jags go for 2, get up 8-0.
That one looked really harsh.
Yeah, there's some weird ones in this game. But Jags were up 11-0 right before the half. Bills score a touchdown. And Buffalo sitting there with 7 points well into the fourth quarter. And they start, bombs away down the field. They make a little bit of a comeback. But Jags hold on, man, 25-20. What'd you make of this game?
Yeah, they did. Strange game because Buffalo, who had looked like the best team in the NFL for the majority of the season, certainly outside of that Jets meltdown by Josh Allen, weren't really getting anything done. And even the touchdown that they got before the half, it wasn't like an amazing play. It was just Diggs one-on-one with Tyson Campbell on the outside, just roasts him off the line. Campbell goes for the jam, misses, essentially. Diggs gets him with the release. And then it's just can Josh Allen see it and get the ball there before Tyson Campbell was able to close the gap of 5 yards of instant separation? He did. He got it in there just before halftime.
Not only did he get it in there, I happened to be in the car at the moment listening to that game. I was listening to the local Buffalo broadcast.
What kind of perspective do you get from the car?
There was a couple moments yesterday where I had the local broadcast. And the local broadcast for Buffalo, I was like, I can't wait to go back and watch this play. Because they made it seem like it was the fastest fastball that Josh Allen has ever thrown. Right? It's like when the guy who already throws above 100 hits 105. I'm not sure that was my takeaway after seeing the pass, but they were like, yeah, he got it in there. It was a laser, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it was great. So they were very excited about the velocity on the Josh Allen.
You would be having just witnessed the rest of the game up until that point. No, it was a big play. It was a good play by them, but it was basically all they had. And then Jacksonville almost answered it right before halftime. So I don't know what was left on the clock. There was still a minute and something left.
Yeah, a minute and change.
Jacksonville almost drove down the field and got more points on the board, except A.J. Epinesa absolutely owned Cam Robinson back in the lineup. Strip sack, fumble recovery, gets the whole trifecta by him. It was almost the only pressure Cam Robinson gave up in the game. It was a weirdly Cam Robinson type of game where he's actually very, very good outside of the one play that ended up being like literally the worst nightmare you can have other than your quarterback getting injured.
He's been far better in pass protection the last couple of years. Cam Robinson was forced into the lineup. He did not start initially. Walker Little, the left tackle for most of the season, right? Walker Little started and got hurt.
Yeah.
And then Cam came in. So A.J. Epinesa, he's having a really good season for the Bills. The back and forth on this game, because Jacksonville had a lot of opportunities, and the Bills' defense cracked down a bunch.
Despite, how have they got so banged up in the secondary again? Everyone's
Buffalo?
hurt. And then Matt Milano going down as well.
Yeah, their two biggest injuries. I mean, I don't even want to say biggest, but Matt Milano, one of the league's best linebackers, gets hurt.
Which sounded, that last I heard, that was some kind of leg fracture and possible knee injuries. So that sounds bad.
Looked bad for Milano, and of course, coming into the season, linebacker, a huge question mark for Buffalo. How are they going to, replace Tremaine Edmonds? At least you still have Milano, so now he's likely out for the season. And then Daquan Jones at defensive tackle, he 90-plus PFF grade so far this year. He missed he leaves the game early as well. So Buffalo not only loses the game, they lose some key players here. Von Miller comes back, plays just 20 snaps, not a huge impact from Von Miller. So they've got some guys coming back like Vaughn, but a ton of depth issues, and like you said, several in the secondary as well.
Yeah, it's repeating. I don't understand how this happens to teams where like one random unit gets really banged up in a given year. And you're like, well, that won't happen again. Like, that was weird, right? And then next year, the same unit gets really banged up again with completely different injuries and often different players. Like, how does that keep repeating? I mean, Buffalo's secondary has gone from they're going to be way better than last year because they're going to be healthy this season. And then Tre'Davious White pops his Achilles, and like the whole thing is spiraling again. The whole secondary is getting hurt, and Matt Milano, who might be the most important player in the back seven with no Tremaine Edmonds there anymore, he's gone as well. Like, that's a real couple of body blows to the Bills.
From a Jags perspective, again, a couple weeks of Calvin Ridley's production going down after he was really good in week one. Looked like they were making an effort to get him the ball early and often, getting him out in space. And that was their initial drive, I thought, was excellent for Jacksonville. And there was a much better distribution with Ridley having 7 catches for 122 and Christian Kirk getting involved. And then Travis Etienne just continued to make big plays. And, me, and I love a good speed back. Love the speed backs, but ETN kept, even whether it was tight red zone, getting to the outside for a touchdown, had the 35-yarder too. Every time the Jags looked like they would seal the deal, hey, the Bills kept coming back and, flipping the field with big-time throws and downfield throws. But I thought overall the Jags needed this game to say, hey, we can hang, right? That same discussion we had about the Cowboys and the Niners and the Eagles. Can the Jags hang with the best teams? And now, I know they lost to the Chiefs back in week 2, but they only gave up 17 points to the Chiefs. They only gave up 20 to Buffalo, and I know Buffalo's got all this weird stuff going on there, but the Jags showing they could hang with Buffalo, who looked like, like you said, the best team in the league. And the Jags, I thought that it was great that they handled all the counter punches, right? It was a good back-and-forth heavyweight battle type of game because Trevor Lawrence, he made a couple weird decisions in the pocket, put the ball on the turf a couple times. But the Jags kept hanging tough, and they won it with the run game, they won it through the pass game, and they won it with the defense kind of making life difficult for the Bills to put points on the board.
Yeah, and I think we kind of knew that already based off that Chiefs game a couple of weeks ago. But what's happening now is that the receivers are not like actively screwing them over week on week. For a couple of weeks, those receivers have been making some plays rather than hanging them out to dry. It's a shame that this is actually technically a home game for Buffalo, because had it been a home game for Jacksonville, I would have had a phenomenal conspiracy theory. Did you see the way they painted the end zones? Or at least one end zone specifically?
What in particular?
So, the way normally it's like the white line, the big, yard-wide line to mark to the edge of the end zone, but then immediately inside of that is just whatever color the end zone is. Well, here it wasn't. There was like a foot-wide strip of grass-colored turf between the white and the blue of the end zone. So I was wondering if Jacksonville had been like, well, our receivers are consistently a foot just over the line, so why don't we make them think that actually the end zone is a foot shorter than it is, and that way they'll be down in the green, which is in the end zone. Touchdown. Zay Jones gets the feet in this time. Coincidence? I'll leave it there.
Part of the reason why I enjoy a Monday morning is because, I've watched all the games and tried to take in as much information as possible, and you have as well.
Yeah.
And you have seen things that I haven't seen. Sometimes I see things that you haven't seen, but you always bring a slightly different perspective to the table, Sam.
I got a great one for you later. You'll love it.
Yeah.
Different game, but you wait till he comes.
I'm sure it's great. Just to wrap this thing up, from a Buffalo perspective, I don't know how these games get this out of hand, but it became another Josh Allen has to be a superhero game. Like, they did not do anything on the ground. Allen was the leading rusher for the Bills with 14 yards. Also had a touchdown in there. And he drops back, 40-plus times. So it doesn't – when they lose, it's like, hey, they need more balance. Sometimes they win these games. But these are the games I think the Bills want to avoid, right? Damian Harris and James Cook and Latavius Murray are pretty good. Like, they've had success this year.
Yeah, what was worrying from their perspective, I think, was so week one was worrying because it showed that Josh Allen is not really in control over when he has those meltdown games. And when he has those meltdown games, it's very difficult for him to win. And that's not a Josh Allen specific thing. That's just when your quarterback melts down in a game and starts pitching the ball to the defense like 3 times, it's really hard to win in the NFL. This was concerning because Josh Allen played really well and they still didn't win. Like, that's a whole different problem where, Josh Allen kind of was Superman and it still wasn't enough. That's problematic. Like, Diggs had a pretty big day. Gabe Davis had a really big day. Deontay Hardy made a few plays, but like Josh Allen was pretty spectacular. And they still weren't. Not only did they not win the game, but they weren't even like, it was a 5-point game, so obviously they were close. But like Jacksonville had them shut down for the majority of that game.
They did, and again, from a Jacksonville perspective, I don't know how to bottle up their consistency. They gave up 37 points to the Jags and Bills combined. They gave up 37 to the Texans. 7 were on a kick return, but they gave up 30 to the Texans offense. And we didn't see that coming. If Jacksonville shows these flashes, but can they, especially defensively, just be a little bit more consistent week to week? I think that's the big question going forward for me, for the Jags. So Jags win 25-20. They'll be coming back. They might not even have a bye next week either.
Crazy amount of flags in that game as well.
Just
penalties raining from the sky.
A lot of laundry there, which is something you've had to learn to do as a parent. Copious amounts of laundry, new skills to provide for your family, how to meal plan for even the pickiest eater, and now how to protect your family's financial future. Fabric by Gerber Life provides an easy one-stop shop for your family's financial needs, offering high-quality term life insurance policies plus other financial solutions in one easy online hub. Fabric was designed by parents for parents to help you get a high-quality, surprisingly affordable term life insurance policy in less than 10 minutes. Fabric has flexible policies that fit your family and your budget with quality policies like $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. Get your personalized quote in just minutes and then apply when it's convenient for you. It's all online and on your schedule. You can go from start to covered in less than 10 minutes with no health exam required. So join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Insurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. All right, man, let's get to the 1 o'clock slate. Let's go to the Pittsburgh Steelers, 17. The Baltimore Ravens, 10. Another weird one, Sam.
Yes.
I don't know how you describe this one. Because on paper, right, the Ravens are 3-1. The Steelers are 2-2, coming off a very disappointing loss against the Houston Texans. And when you see the way the game starts, Baltimore's up 10-0 relatively early in the second quarter. And, it looks like, hey, Baltimore's the better team. Yeah. However,
it looked like they were the better team for almost the entire game.
But this is Ravens Steelers, and weird stuff happens. The 10-0 lead for Baltimore gets chipped away at by the Steelers. It's 10-3. Then there's a blocked punt in the fourth quarter to make it 10-5. Another field goal to make it 10-8. And then the Ravens are driving, right? They're driving down the field to put the nail in the coffin. They're up 2. A touchdown presumably puts them up 9. A 2-score game, and Lamar Jackson, who was excellent in this game. Lamar Jackson was outstanding throwing the football in this game. Interception in the end zone. His worst pass of the day to Joey Porter Jr. Steelers come back, 41-yarder. by Kenny Pickett to George Pickens, ends up being the game winner, and the Steelers win 17-10.
Yeah, this was a game where if you watched like the opening stages of it, the end doesn't make any sense. Like, you watched Baltimore go up 10-0, Lamar's cooking, Steelers aren't really doing much on either side of the ball. And you're like, game over. I mean, Baltimore's way better. This game is going to end with like a double-digit difference. The Ravens are going to win by 14, 18, whatever. And then this is a little bit like those Jacksonville games where Trevor Lawrence had been dealing and his receivers kept letting him down. Lamar was looking phenomenal early, but then he gets a drop on a wide open pass to Zay Flowers. It's a tiny bit behind him, but you got to catch that. Rashad Bateman drops an easy touchdown in the end zone. Zay Flowers screws one up later where he like falls down on an adjustment. Like, Lamar Jackson should have had many more like yards and points in this game, and the Ravens receivers were conspiring not to let that happen. You add on top of that, Larry Ogunjobi forces a fumble on Justice Hill that kind of started. If Baltimore had driven that drive, put up some points, maybe that's too far for Pittsburgh. So there was like just enough freaky things in there to keep the game close. They had a blocked punt as well, narrowly escaped a touchdown, got a safety in it. By the way, I would buy an argument if you wanted to tell me that was a touchdown. The blocked punt. He got two hands on the ball with control and his elbows like toe dragged, swagged over like at the corner of the end zone.
That was similar. Did you see the Niners fumble recovery along the sideline against the Cowboys? I really thought they might take the Niners one and say he was out of bounds because you need to recover it just before the white, show control, and then you touch the white.
That's the question. Like that's what the problem with these ones, right? Is they always, what is control in these circumstances? Like, as far as I'm concerned, once your hands are on the ball and it doesn't move, that's control. I mean, it doesn't really matter if it's a frame before the next thing, like whatever hits out of bounds. That is control, and it does apparently demonstrably happen before anything touches out of bounds. So in this situation, he dives, grabs, two hands on the ball, it doesn't move from that point on, and his elbows, like the first thing to hit, he's horizontal at the time, diving for this ball. The first thing to come down is like the bottom of both elbows, in bounds, before the rest of his arm comes down like out of bounds. That's in bounds.
Yeah, but they gave it a safety anyway.
Yep.
And then again, it was like Pittsburgh's offense came to life, right? We were putting out the George Pickens stat. He was 0 for 8 after catching 64% of his contested catches last year. He was 0 for 8 through 4 weeks of this season. Not only does he start making those contested catches, he also has the 41-yarder where he gives that little late arm bar to separate against Marlon Humphrey. Beautiful throw by Kenny Pickett, and that ends up being the game winner. Lamar was outstanding in this entire game. Kenny Pickett, was having pretty much the same game he'd had for the rest of the year, but the Steelers made plays down the stretch.
There have been a few times this season where, the Pittsburgh offense is doing what it usually does, which is to say nothing, and then somebody somewhere, whether it's in the booth, whether it's Kenny Pickett at quarterback, just goes, you know what, screw this, we're just throwing the ball to George Pickens. Like for the next foreseeable. The offense is going to be, where is Pickens? I'm throwing him the ball. And that works. Like, that's their best thing they do on offense is when they just go, I don't care what's being called, we're throwing it to George Pickens. And like the big play at the death, like that was over Marlon Humphrey as well. Theoretically, their best corner.
Yep.
The other thing I'd forgotten is the interception, the Joey Porter Jr. interception. The Steelers had given them the ball there. Like, they'd muffed the punt and set Baltimore up in like the red zone. Like, they dug themselves out of that, this could be the game right here, screw up with that interception.
Yeah, it's funny because it wasn't like everything went Pittsburgh's way in the comeback. Like you said, there was probably a fair argument that punt could have been a touchdown.
Right, but every time they made a balls of something, they fixed it.
Yes. So even at the end of the game, Pittsburgh screws up running out the clock. So they're running out the clock, and they get an illegal formation. So I think they probably would have punted. Sorry, they would have
They got an illegal formation on a play where they were like literally trying to chew clock. Like
Yes.
take the ball and sort of scurry backwards for a few seconds and then
Right.
take the knee.
And so Baltimore never should have seen the ball again, basically. And they did with 50-something seconds left. But that was when the closer came in, Sam. The closer, T.J. Watt, comes in with the game-ending.
He doesn't have a good nickname, right? Did you just coin one?
Maybe. We could give him... I don't know if we're the ones to give T.J. Watt a nickname.
Oh, can you imagine how mad Steelers fans would be if we found one that stuck?
Oh, that would be funny. That would be funny. I'll tell you, I'll call him the ball magnet. I don't know if that'll catch on.
Bad.
But he's the ball magnet. He had the fumble recovery again. So, again, during this entire comeback attempt by the Steelers, a couple drives earlier, you have Alex Highsmith with
that's the thing. So
strip
Baltimore,
sack.
within like 2 minutes, Baltimore had multiple drives to try and win this. The first one was like a replica of the other week where Alex Highsmith whoops his guy at left tackle all the way around the edge, strip sack, fumble, and the ball like bounces right to T.J. Watt again, recovery. Literally almost a clone of that play, except he doesn't score a touchdown on it with the recovery. And then, as you say, Pittsburgh has that drive and screws up the running out of the clock. Baltimore gets it right back, and then you get T.J. Watt actually being the guy that creates the play.
Yeah, T.J. Watt, I mean, look, he is awesome. He makes those. He does have that knack for those fourth quarter plays and closing things down. So we'll call him the closer for now.
I mean, if it wasn't so emotionally charged by fans, it's a fascinating contrast, the T.J. Watt versus Myles Garrett debate, because they do appear to be consistently slightly different players in terms of how this manifests. Like T.J. Watt does win less often than most elite pass rushers in the NFL on the edge, right? Having said that, he does also generate more of those closing plays, those game-changing plays. He's on, like Chandler Jones always did this, right? Chandler Jones won less often than other elite edge rushers in his NFL career, but consistently generated more sacks than basically anybody. Whereas Myles Garrett is the other end of that spectrum. He wins more often than basically anybody, but doesn't or hasn't yet in his NFL career had as many of those game-changing, game-closing plays. And that is an interesting, dynamic. Which one is more useful? Which one is more valuable? Which one is better? Because I don't think there's a right answer to that necessarily. There is clearly a line where X number of wins is worth more than one game-changing play. But is it 5? Is it 10? Is it 15? Is it, what is that balance? And that's what we're playing with on a weekly, yearly, career basis with those two pass rushers.
Part of it's the probabilities, because historically, if you win more, you'll get more sacks and you'll make those game-changing plays.
But it's also
But does a guy literally have a knack for that, like T.J. Watt? But he seems to continue to do that, so got to give him credit for it. Alex Highsmith did have a huge game with 9 pressures as well.
Right, and it's also that sort of classic, age-old tale of pressure in and of itself is valuable. Like, you put pressure on a quarterback, his passer rating drops 35 points, generally, right? So it is, even if a guy never gets a sack, there is value in simply pressuring the quarterback, and it's just a case of how valuable is that relative to a sack, to 2 sacks, whatever. Like I said, if it wasn't such a charged debate, it'd just be a fascinating case study generally.
I want to go through Lamar Jackson's game really quick here, because as you said,
that's how we speed through the show.
We're going to go throw by throw.
Cool.
On Lamar Jackson.
Got it.
We have him with 7 drops. Not him, his receivers.
Yes.
What's the term you guys use? It literally looked like.
I don't know if you're allowed to say that.
You can't say that on air?
These days. Not these days.
You could say the paddle hands part.
Yeah, paddle-handed, whatever.
Yeah, okay. That's what you and Ben taught me that over 10 years ago.
I always liked the term, he has hands like feet.
Yeah, well, that was the Ravens receivers. You have I think of the 7 drops, I think all of them were beyond the first down marker.
And most of them were egregious.
And two were in the end zone. Yeah. You have back-to-back plays. It was a nice throw up and away from coverage to Mark Andrews that's dropped. And then Rashad Bateman looks like, instead of paddle hands, I always say that practice where Brandon Marshall was mad and he, instead of catching the ball, he kept spiking it on purpose. Remember that when he was playing for Josh McDaniels back in the day?
Josh McDaniels, huh?
That's what, weird. That's what Rashad Bateman looked like in the end zone. He looked like he's,
it's terrible.
Playing volleyball.
I felt sorry for him actually then, because that's a guy who was supposed to be, the number one receiver in this offense multiple times in the past. Kept getting hurt. Gets back. He's on the field. He's wide open for a touchdown, and just horrible. No excuses drop. Zay Flowers, it was bad, but you can at least be like, it was slightly behind him. Had to do a slight adjustment. And Bateman, it's just like, no, it hits him right where he wants it.
Zay had nobody near him though.
No, I know. But you can at least give a slight crumb of something wasn't ideal on this play. Bateman, it's like you can't find fault in what happened right up until it didn't end up in his hands.
So there were 2 actual drops in the end zone. Maybe the worst one's Nelson Aguilar in the third quarter. Beautiful deep ball by Lamar Jackson. Could have been another.
Cue up the Aguilar guy.
Is there an Aguilar guy?
Is there an Aguilar? Have you never seen that? The news dude, the guy that caught a baby out of a building or whatever, and they interviewed him on the news. He's like, I just had to catch the thing, not like Aguilar. Just randomly drops a stray on Aguilar during a report about catching a baby out of a building.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And then so the last thing I'll add here: 7 actual drops. 6 of them were beyond the line of scrimmage officially, or in the end zone. 3 of them absolutely could have become touchdowns because of the Aguilar one. And that's not including the one where Zay Flowers just fell over when he was behind the defense.
Right, which isn't a drop.
Which isn't a drop. And again, I spent the weekend explaining the difference between a missed tackle and running through contact in the end zone. We won't get into all that. But there are other, right? We live in a very black and white world here, Sam. There are other incompletions that could be the receiver's faults that aren't necessarily drops. So Zay probably should have had 3 more catches, 2 of which were drops and 1 where he fell over. So Lamar Jackson, who I know had a fumble at the end on a strip sack and threw an interception when they could have put the game away. Lamar Jackson did have an excellent game until some of those late plays there.
Yeah,
those did not have any help.
Those are always kind of unfortunate, where a guy has a phenomenal game and yet the one really bad play that he has kind of does directly affect the outcome of that game.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it was bad. I mean, that's the nature of it.
This was like Zach Wilson the other night, a week ago or whatever, where he has this incredible couple of drives and then goes full Zach Wilson and just drops the ball from the snap. It's like,
All right, so the Steelers head into their bye at 3-2. Mike Tomlin doing it again.
How is that possible?
Right? How do you win those games?
How is the current, after 5 games, given everything we've just seen from the Steelers, how do they have a winning record?
Your preseason take, it's still alive.
Their offense stinks.
They tied for the lead in the AFC North.
They might even be.
Are they first in the AFC North?
Right.
Because the Browns are 2-2.
Browns are 2-2.
Yeah. Your first place Steelers. Your preseason predictions.
They are, in fact, yeah. Well, they're tied, but they are first because of the head-to-head.
All right. Good stuff. Let's go Miami Dolphins.
First, by the way, with a negative 31 points differential and 4 touchdowns to the bad.
Nerds, I tell you. The only thing that matters is wins and losses in the Steel City.
It's true.
Miami Dolphins 31, New York Giants 16. Dolphins moved to 4-1.
What a game.
Giants 1-4. It was, if Tua didn't throw the ball to the defense, game would have been a lot worse. The Giants scored their first half touchdown when Tua threw the ball through the hands of, I forget which Giants defender it was, popped into Jason Pinnock's hands, who takes it back for 100. What was the official? 100.
So they're
102-yard interception return. So the Dolphins are up 14-3.
So there are only
late
points in the first half of the season.
They're only touchdown.
Pick 6.
They're only touchdown. They had kicked a field goal in this game. So the only first half touchdown this year for the Giants is a 102-yard interception, pick 6. So the Dolphins were closing in on going up 21-3. They actually kicked another field goal before the end of the half. So that one kept it kind of close. But yeah, Miami's Dolphins too much for the Giants.
Yeah. This was back to the Miami we'd seen for most of the first 5 weeks of the season. They were unstoppable on offense. They're too fast for the Giants, too creative, just too easy for most of it. Like Tua was contributing to the only thing stopping that offense. They're so creative. Like, obviously, everyone talks about the speed, which is self-evident at all times. But it's how creative they are with that speed. And they're not just saying we are faster than you, we're going to win because you can't match the speed we have on offense. So, like, we're also going to create a ton of misdirection and make it like difficult for you to track the speed and then get the ball in their hands in these weird creative ways. So you've got like Devin Achane getting an end around after some misdirection. You're like, the guy's already faster than everybody we have on defense, and now you're getting him the ball when everyone's just flowing the opposite direction because Tyreek Hill or whoever it is going there. It's harsh. Like, it's too hard to stop. And so people can't stop it. Miami now has, using those NGS numbers, the 7 fastest single play ball carrying speeds are all Miami Dolphins this season.
Yeah,
it's like Achane got a big play, and they're like, he might be the fastest guy in the NFL. And then it's like Tyreek Hill just goes, hold my beer, makes a big play, tops him on the chart. Now it's like, actually, not only is he not the fastest guy in the NFL, he's probably the 3rd or 4th fastest guy in his own offense. And then Miami also in this game set and then extended a record for the most yardage through 5 games of any offense in NFL history. They overtook the greatest show on turf, which was previously, by the way, how impressive was that? The greatest show on turf 20 years ago was previously the most productive offense in the NFL through 5 games.
I'd say this every now and then, I think, if you've listened to the podcast, but could you imagine if we were doing the podcast back in 1999 where Kurt Warner, after stocking grocery shelves, just comes in and starts leading the greatest offense. Now, that might have been the year 2000 where they had the yards, not 99. But 99...
It was 99.
Either way, both of those years, they were electric. It kind of fell apart in 2000. Yeah. But in 99, Kurt Warner out of nowhere, I feel like I would have been over here doubting Kurt Warner every single week. Like, we won't be able to keep it up.
No, it was 2000.
It was 2000. But in 99 is when he took over, and they were electric then as well. Would have been crazy. But yeah, it's very impressive for the Rams, but it's very impressive for the Dolphins. Did you see? Again?
Yes. It's not dissimilar from the Brock Purdy thing, right? Like, a guy comes from absolutely nowhere to lead basically the best offense in the NFL. Now, Kurt Warner was doing it in a different way than Brock Purdy, so it depends how closely you're paying attention, how tight that narrative would be.
Yeah, but there's some similarities.
Yeah,
but Warner was taking over a team that had won like 6 games in 3 years with the Rams. Purdy's taken over an offense that's already been cooking. He just looks like he's the perfect engineer for that thing, and executing it really well. A couple things. Did you see Mike McDaniel's response?
Yes.
To that was
mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Our plan all along was to have the best numbers in the world through 5 games.
Yeah. So that was great.
Do you see Miami's punt return unit got flagged for 12 men on the field with 11 men on the field?
They did?
Yeah. They had to
that's the thing. Like, I'm not watching that.
I don't know what
happened. I'm not
happened.
picking up that note.
But there was some kind of breakdown because a guy was running off. But the guy that was running off, I'm pretty sure, was the 11th man on the field. And because he was running off, the officials were like, I didn't make it. Throw the flag. 12 men. And then they had to actually challenge the play to be like, we only had 11.
Yeah.
I can't work out if they were. I couldn't work out at the time. A lot of games going on, a lot of plates spinning in the air.
Which is why I don't focus on this stuff.
You gotta dive in there. I couldn't work out whether he challenged because he thought the last guy running off made it, and therefore it didn't matter if it was the 12th man because he was off the field anyway, or if he challenged it knowing that we only had 11 guys on the field either way, so it's not a penalty. Either way, he won, so it didn't matter.
That's outstanding. The Giants, the grades aren't live yet. PFF.com. However,
they're unlikely to be good.
3 weeks after they had the 3rd worst pass blocking grade that we've seen since 2020.
Yeah.
This game may have been worse.
Oh, God.
At quick glance.
Well, I mean,
you see the number.
Jalen Mayfield was playing in this game, and that's not a good thing.
The pass blocking grade is under 20 as of right now.
Just look at the personnel they're dealing with. Yeah. I mean, Evan Neal, okay, fine. Mark Lewinsky, Ben Bredeson, Jalen Mayfield, Joshua Ezeudu, and Matt Peart got on the field.
Yeah.
That's not good.
So conversely, the Dolphins defense will look splendid. Andrew Van Ginkel with double-digit pressures, Bradley Chubb, Christian Wilkins, Zach Seiler. They got after it, man. So credit the Dolphins, but Giants are looking pretty bad. A couple other notes here. Daniel Jones leaves with a neck injury.
After his sixth sack.
Yeah, it's just
which is like record-setting pace.
We'll talk about the Patriots soon too, but there's certain teams, like when it's snowballing, it just seems to get worse and worse, right? Like the Monday night game for Daniel Jones, when he got sacked 10 times, there were certain ones where it's like, oh, that's on Daniel Jones. But you have to be like, man, at some point, how do you have any confidence in anything? Like, how do you just go through your progressions like it's normal? You just lose it, so it snowballs and it looks terrible.
Yeah.
So anyway, the Giants bad.
This is the thing I don't know that even coaches truly appreciate that as much as maybe they should. Like, remember, you see the sequence a week ago, like when Daniel Jones throws the completely indefensible, terrible interception in the red zone, and Brian Daboll's like losing his mind on the sideline, like launching the iPad and stuff. And you're like, that was bad. That was terrible, right? On the other hand, you've basically crossed the point, crossed the threshold where Daniel Jones is effectively in any way responsible for what happens in a game anymore. Like, yeah, there was no real pressure on that particular play. Having said that, the dude has like post-traumatic stress disorder from the previous pressures that have been in every other play. He can't function. Like, you can't just switch it off for the one play where it doesn't manifest and say, well, this play was clean. What's your problem? Which I think even coaches don't fully appreciate at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you deal with all that. So the last thing I want to mention is Devin Achane. He is now number 2 in the NFL in rushing yards. He ranks 37th in carries.
Yes.
But he's second in the league in rushing. In this game, he goes 11 carries for $151. That's 13.7 per carry. And his average barely went up a little bit. It went up a little bit, but it barely went up. He's averaging over 12 yards per carry this season. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. Achane, statistically, through 5 games. And he's a rookie as well. Like, this is his introduction to the NFL. I don't think we're at the point where it's going to be like, look, Raheem Mostert's really good, too, in this offense. I don't think we're at the point where it's like, well, give Achane, 20 carries. Let's extend that out. But I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. I think there was a stretch. Remember, I had to look it up. Napoleon Kaufman. Remember Napoleon Kaufman for the Raiders?
No.
You don't?
No.
He was a big play threat. He had this stretch of like 5 games in 99 or 2000 where he had 200-yard games, and he was a big play guy. He just kept reeling off these 50-yarders. That's Achane in this right now.
There was, the two that jumped to mind. I mean, Jamal Charles' entire career was a little bit like this.
Yeah.
Albeit in a slightly less turbocharged version. And then C.J. Spiller had a year like that where his entire year was just big plays.
And Mike Renner, rest in peace, he made a, look at you, a Chris Johnson comparison. Chris Johnson, angle-breaking speed.
Yeah.
And so imagine coming into the season, maybe there might be some Achane fans out there that were like, of course we knew this guy was Chris Johnson. But imagine knowing what the Dolphins have on offense, and it's like, hey, this offseason, we're going to add Chris Johnson to it.
That's the thing. It's like, imagine those players within this type of offense. Like, as fast and as like Raheem Mostert is a good player, right? But I think it's fairly clear that Raheem Mostert in a normal offense doesn't look like this. You have to apply that to everybody within this offense. Like, every single one of these people is not only a fast player that's a great playmaker, but they're collectively being supercharged by the scheme and how wide open everybody is. Like, early in this game, Tua's just dropping back, and it's instant throws to wide open guys that are just untouched. It's insane. So, like, Achane's looking great, and his college tape was great and all that kind of thing. But, like, remember there was a time where Barry Sanders was concerned about being put into like a run and shoot offense, because back in the day it was like the way that running backs get production is I formation, heavy power running offenses. And I forget whoever it was, but they were like, dude, you're going to run for 2,000 yards in this offense because we're going to spread everybody out horizontal. We're going to take guys out of the box. You're going to have more space than you've ever had before, and your production is going to go to the moon. This is a way more sophisticated version of that, where everybody in this offense has twice the amount of space to work in that they typically do or would in any other offense. And that just sends everything skyward. Like, Chris Johnson in this offense, I mean, what did he run? 2,060-something yards? God knows what his numbers would be.
Yeah. So that's what they've added to this offense. So Achane's got some ridiculous numbers right now. Again, Tua wasn't Tua's best game. 2 interceptions. One was really bad, of course, the pick six that kept the Giants in it, but still throws for 308 yards and 2 scores, over 10 yards per attempt. So Dolphins bounced back really well after that Bills loss. Mm-hmm. The NFL season's going strong, and DraftKings Sportsbook's hooking new customers up with an offer that's even stronger. Bet $5 on any game this week to score $200 instantly in bonus bets. And DraftKings isn't stopping there. You got all customers who can take advantage of a sweetener offer every single game day this October. So right now, it's October, Monday Night Football. Tonight, you got the Raiders, you got the Packers. Packers favored by 2 tonight. You can get in there and make a pick. And if you're already a customer, they got a great offer for you. So get in on the game day greatness. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code PFF. New customers can score $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet $5 on the NFL. That's code PFF only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. Eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. You got to go check that out at sportsbook.draftkings.com/football. I noticed during the London game yesterday, Rich Eisen did a great job. He was reading something about, I don't know, NFL Plus or something. He just threw in terms and conditions apply. He said it's not even part of the read, but I know that they apply. I'm going to mention this because people need to know it.
They apply.
He's a pro. He's been doing this for years. Such a pro.
I mean, he knows how to slip in an ad read or even just an ad mention.
Yeah.
A corporate tie-in. He's good at that. Very good.
Very good. Rich a pro. All right, where do we want to go here? Well, let's do this one. New Orleans 34. Patriots 0. Saints move to 3-2. Patriots fall to 1-4. This was another one where I was in the car for a little bit listening to the local New England broadcast. So I was watching games on my phone and iPad. I wasn't driving the car.
Good, because
someone else was driving.
It's getting quite hazardous.
So I had to keep up with some of the stuff. And then I had New England on in the background. I like the local broadcast because you see Scott Zolak doing the local broadcast for New England. Mm-hmm. Got some historic calls, like every other homer local, and he was very upset early in the game.
Yeah,
when the Patriots punted on 4th down in New Orleans territory, he's like, "You got to go for it. You got to just do it. You got to do it. You got to go for it." And there's very many times he's just shaking his head, there's a play unfolding, and you hear him in the background wide open. When the Saints kept flipping the field with big plays, so Zoe's upset back in New England. But this was bad across the board. Mac Jones starts the game starts the scoring with a pick 6 to Tyrann Mathieu. Mac Jones now has 5 passing touchdowns and 4 touchdowns off of interceptions and fumbles, which is not good.
No. So technically, the worst defeat in Bill Belichick's career was last week, where he lost by 35 points. This was only 34-0. However, I would be willing to argue that 34-0, 0, no points, is worse than a 35-point defeat where you've actually managed to score. Well, either way, the 2 worst defeats in Bill Belichick's career have come consecutively back-to-back. And this one, the Saints are not supposed to be one of the best teams in the NFL. And you just got murdered.
Let's give the New England story is a big one. So I want to give it its fair, it's due time. Let's give the Saints their credit and then circle back to what this means in New England, because there's going to be a lot of talk this week, Sam. There's going to be a lot of talk in New England. Credit the Saints. They moved to 3-2. They're another team where if you could bottle up consistency. They didn't play horribly last week against the Bucs, but they were very disappointed, I'm assuming, losing in the Dome to a Bucs team that they're at least as good as on paper, and the Bucs really took it to them. So the Saints bounce back. Phrase I've used for the last 4 or 5 years with the Saints. They could play championship level defense. They did, right? They made every single throw. As bad as it is in New England, they were challenging every single throw. They're making life difficult for New England. They won up front. Carl Granderson just got paid on their defensive line. He's playing some great football. Alvin Kamara looking more like himself. and they created some big plays, right? They got the ball down the field a few times with, of course, the great Rashid Shaheed, Michael Thomas creating big plays, and Derek Carr looked a lot better than he had in previous weeks.
Yeah,
the Saints deserve credit.
Probably the best game Derek Carr's had as quarterback of the Saints, and even a couple of his better throws fell incomplete. But that was,
some really good ones, up along the sideline.
Yeah, sure. If they get this version of Derek Carr all season long, this is kind of what we talked about of this is the guy that's capable of putting a team in the playoffs and maybe winning a game or two here or there before you run up against, San Francisco or somebody. And then I'm not sure how that works, but like if they get this version of Derek Carr all season long, and he's probably still not 100% with that shoulder injury, that's a good sign for the Saints. This offense looked good. Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara back in the lineup. That was an impressive performance.
So on the other side, the sky is falling in New England.
It's fallen.
It's done.
Yeah.
72-3. They've
collapsed.
Been outscored the last 2 weeks. 72-3. And so say what you want about the post-Brady era in New England. For a couple of years, it looked like, I said this before the podcast, and I was wrong apparently. New England for the last couple of years felt like a team that pretty much can't beat good teams, right? They're just overmatched against the Bills and against the Cowboys last week. They're just overmatched. But against bad teams, they tend to beat up on them, or or against a team that's comparable to them, which the Saints might look like on paper. They could pull those wins off. But now it's way worse than that. In New England. Yeah. It's way worse. Mac Jones has no confidence. He's got friends. He's got sources over there talking to
people, sources close to Mac Jones.
Which is so weird. Henry McKenna, I like Henry, is the one reporting it. And it's a shrewd move by Henry to, talk to sources close to Mac Jones, which, by the way, could be Mac Jones' girlfriend. It could be Giselle. Who the heck knows? I assumed it was Giselle because she's got a history of, blaming the receivers in New England. But, sources close to Mac say, basically the can't cook without the groceries. He's using the Parcells line.
Yeah, which is a strange analogy to use simply because it's typically done for coaches and quarterbacks. It's like I would use a different analogy to ensure that people understand the problem isn't me, it's the people I'm throwing to.
Which is why you don't
even if that's not even true, but if I was making that argument.
But I'm guilty right now because we're talking about this story that shouldn't be a story. They went to Mac Jones' high school friend who's like, hey, what do you think about the Patriots' struggles? Well, it's not my friend Mac's fault.
Yeah, there's always it's difficult because there's always the implication that the Mac Jones controls everybody that's connected to him, right? Like Mac Jones, you never heard this with Tom Brady. Sources next to Tom Brady, except Giselle, publicly. But sources next to Tom Brady were never on the side, hey, who's this crap bag at left tackle he's dealing with? What's this? We got to fix that problem. You know what I mean? Tom Brady kept a tight control over everybody around him, and nobody ever said a word out of turn. The implication being that if you have somebody that is suddenly sounding off, that's a failing of Mac Jones somehow. And it could just be there's some loudmouth asshole that's talking to a reporter randomly on the side, and Mac Jones has no control over that one way or the other. It does start to, you add that to, remember last year he got kind of in the doghouse where he basically went outside of the organization asking people, is this how an offense is supposed to work in the NFL? Because it doesn't feel like it to me. What do I know? But this looks bad, And that really pissed Bill Belichick off because, what are you doing? We don't go outside of the organization, even if the organization is a mess. So you add that to this. That's for a guy that obviously it's not whatever you sort of say about where the blame lies. And look, Mac Jones for the second week in a row got quote unquote benched, and Bill Belichick afterwards was like, it's not all his fault. Everything was bad.
I don't think that's another one where go ahead, finish your point.
So, but in a world where everything is spiraling out of control, things are going bad, and you're not demonstrably not the problem. You know what I mean? You might not be the problem, but at the very minimum, you're not obviously, definitely not the problem. So if you're in this with everybody else, it doesn't look good if you somehow start slinging stones. And that's, who knows if he is slinging the stones. But the point is, it doesn't look good when somebody connected to you is slinging the stones.
No, But again,
I'm just saying, Mac Jones needs to phone up everybody he knows and say, "Shut the hell up!
Stop talking.
This is looking bad."
Yeah, I mean, this has been now. Listen, New England's defense just lost Christian Gonzalez and Matthew Judon.
Right.
So the defense wasn't even as bad. I mean, it wasn't good, but it's almost like not as bad as 34-0 seems because you've got the offense that can't move the ball. Threw a pick six
right at the start. Like Sean Wade makes a phenomenal pass breakup, and you're like, okay, there's elements to that. Number one, that's an amazing play. Number two, it was Sean Wade that made it. What the hell is he even doing on an NFL field at the moment? Well, that's how badly beat up the Patriots defense is.
The story in New England though is Bill Belichick, the GM, versus Bill Belichick, the coach. And look, if we criticize Bill Belichick, I want to admit, I mean, the dude's probably forgotten more about football than I know, right?
Yeah.
Dude's great. But the GM moves, like the offensive line looks atrocious. And the criticism we had before the season of the weapons, and, again, it doesn't mean it shows up on every play. I think the Patriots, they have plays where they get open, right? And Mac might miss them. They have plays where there's no separation. They have plays where the offensive line gets whooped, right? It's a full team effort there. But the personnel moves on offense, when other teams who have a rookie quarterback are a little bit more aggressive and they're getting the big shiny object. You know why the shiny object is important? Because they matter, right? I know the Titans lost yesterday, but like if DeAndre Hopkins wasn't on that team, the Titans lose by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah,
right. That's how important the number one receiver is.
And that was a move they could have made.
Now, I'm saying that's the move that you're considering there. So the Titans aren't the best example. But there was a game yesterday where DeAndre Hopkins just earns all the targets and is the offense for his team. And New England doesn't have that, right? It's like, well, Devontae Parker, all right, throw it up into tight coverage. I mean, so all of it's bad, including Mac Jones, including the receivers. And so I guess my main point is I thought the Patriots might lose games, right? But it would be like, hey, they're just a mediocre team. Now they look like a bad football team across the board. And Bill Belichick hasn't had a bad football team since his first year there when they won 5 games.
Right. I mean, you kind of have to park the defense for a moment because, as I said, it's so beat up. Sean Wade is playing for them. And albeit making plays, that's not a good thing. But the offense, I think you're starting to see, like the offense is the best example of what's going wrong here. And there's 2 ways of looking at it. The one, which the shouty shows will use, is Bill Belichick is a fraud. Bill Belichick was created by Tom Brady. He's never been good. He just stumbled into a Hall of Fame quarterback, the greatest of all time. And then everything looked like he was a genius, right? The actual analysis that has a bit more nuance than that would still blame him, but the blame would be a failure to adapt to a change in circumstance, which is when you have Tom Brady, all of a sudden all of these like little moves of sort of moderate players with flaws but can be pieced together in a jigsaw that actually augment Brady and everything works look like genius, right? Like this receiving core with Tom Brady in his prime, maybe you're looking at it and going, this is a collection of, really smart players who all have a little skill somewhere and pieced together it's a group that can work. I mean, Brady did that several times in his NFL career, where if you took the individual pieces of his receiving core and like dispersed them throughout the NFL, which happened. I mean,
like Deion Branch went other places and didn't do anything. Yeah,
they would all look terrible, but somehow pieced together around Tom Brady, it's like, this is fine. This worked cool. This is great. I think we're seeing like Brady's left. Mac Jones comes in. They've tooled around with the coaching and whatever. But the point is the approach has still kind of been the same, which is we just get all these like flawed players, mash them together, and that will create a thing that works. It isn't. And it might not be able to if you don't have a Tom Brady. So I think Belichick's, where he should deserve some criticism at this point, is like the failure to adapt to that. The fact that they had, a potential DeAndre Hopkins sitting there like waiting for a phone call, and instead they decided to bring in like Juju Smith-Schuster. It's like that didn't move the needle.
They let Jacoby Myers walk, who looks pretty good for the Raiders.
Right, but even that, like I think, we'd kind of reached the end of the Jacoby Myers thing in New England, and that was the same. Like he was emblematic of this failure to do the big move. The big move was DeAndre Hopkins, and maybe that wouldn't have worked either, but at least you would have taken a swing. Whereas now the problem is you're not trying to make the big move that might change this. You're just sort of relying on eventually we'll find the magic again, and it's not happening.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder how difficult it is for Belichick to think back and say, we won a Super Bowl with Cordero Patterson and Chris Hogan as our outside receivers.
Right.
We had a Julian Edelman out there as well, but those were our outside receivers. We've won Super Bowls with David Patton and Troy Brown as our main receivers,
I mean,
right?
how hard
And
must it
David
be?
Gibbons. Like, that's, even though that was 20 years ago, that's probably still in his head. Now, there's moments where they're like, oh, by the way, we also got Randy Moss. We made the big splash play. We put up a lot of points. We didn't win a Super Bowl with Randy Moss. I always wonder how much that stuff gets in his head. He's like, we won Super Bowls with Chris Hogan.
Yeah.
We didn't win Super Bowls with Randy Moss. Let's fill it up with Chris Hogan's.
Right. It has to be. I'm not saying.
And not realizing the Brady dynamic enough.
I'm not saying this is easy, but and it has to be incredibly difficult for a guy that spent 20, 25 years winning consistently year on year on year with this type of approach to then rewire yourself and say this can't work anymore. And by the way, even harder because like the NFL is so small sample size and you can be taken in incorrect directions based off like one piece of random ass evidence. But I think it's becoming inescapable that the previous approach is not going to get you out of this. And the only approach, therefore, that will is some kind of big swing in a different direction. And the fact that he's not doing that, I think, is digging his own grave, which I think is coming, by the way. Like this, it doesn't matter if you're Josh McDaniels, Bill Belichick, or anybody else, you can't keep stacking up like 35-point losses.
And so that's the worst part, right? Like if they're only losing by a touchdown, it's still bad, right? If you're a 1-4 team and you're losing by a touchdown, you're still talking to Mr. Kraft here, and you're saying, we're close.
Hey, Bob. It's not as bad as it looks.
It's not as bad as it looks. They got the Raiders next week, which, by the way, Tony Romo and
they
Jim
were,
Nantz are
by
on
the way,
call.
like earlier in the season. They
were close.
One score loss to Philadelphia, one score loss to Miami. And now it's like,
So they got the Raiders next week.
I mean, if they lose that's awful. That's like, I don't know how you're coming out
That
of
was
the
what I
other
was
side
thinking.
of that.
Coming into the week, I'm thinking they could beat the Saints at home. They can go to Vegas and beat the Raiders. They'll be 3-3. But then they have to take on the Bills and the Dolphins back-to-back. So that looks like a 3-5, right? Now it's even worse. You have the Bills and Dolphins week 7 and 8. A couple weeks later, you get the Giants later, but you get the Chargers. You'll have the first-place Steelers. And you get the Chiefs. You get the Bills again. I mean, it really is looking like, hey, you might be picking top 5, top 8, unless you really figure it out. Or you might be picking number 1 overall. Who the heck knows? Like, it's bad right now.
Yeah.
In New England.
If they manage to lose to the Raiders, like then they are staring, 1-6, 7 in the face?
1-7.
Because then you would assume
if they lose to the Raiders, they have Bills and Dolphins. They're a likely 1-7 team.
Yeah.
Heading into November.
That would be.
Even then they might be 2-6. Even if they beat the Raiders, they might be 2-6 heading into November. It's just as bad.
But at least you can you stem the bleeding with a short-term win that gets everybody distracted.
It's just a big storyline because Hall of Fame, best coach of all time, Bill Belichick, is clearly isn't infallible, and it's now gotten to the point where you're not just trudging along with 7 and 8 win teams in the post-Brady era. You now look like one of the worst teams in the NFL, and you're the GM and you're the head coach. And so the new thing is, are you too old for this? Are you not reaching the players the same way? Does the Patriot way? Is that all old? That's why it's a big story, and we're spending some time on it. We'll have more on this week, but that'll be the discussion this week across the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said earlier, credit to the Saints. They deserve credit as well.
The Saints played a really good game, as you would expect, being like 30-something up, 34-0. This looked, as I say, the best game by Derek Carr, but the defense showed up. They won in basically every facet. I mean, it's, the focus was on New England for how bad they were, but basically point to an area, and the Saints played well there.
All right, let's go. Indianapolis 23, Tennessee Titans 16. Colts moved to 3-2. Titans moved to 2-3. Sam, the Titans are now 0-3 on the road. Now they play in London next week, and that's really going to throw things off. I might not even pick that game.
But are they the home or the road team?
They're home, but in London.
Yeah.
It's really throwing off.
Does that count? Have you run the numbers on that?
I have not run the numbers on that yet. Okay. London, it throws everything off when you're across the pond. But the news, lots of news here besides just the game itself. Colts moved to 3-2, as I mentioned. You also have Zach Moss at running back going 23 carries for $165. Jonathan Taylor, after Jonathan Taylor signs his contract, comes back, makes his debut, 6 carries for 18 yards, coming off of his injury. And Anthony Richardson also gets injured again. It sounds like it's an AC joint, and the quick estimate is he might miss around a month for Anthony Richardson. Gardner Minshew came in relief, and for the second time this year, a great relief outing by Gardner Minshew to help lead the Colts to victory.
Yeah. I mean, Jonathan Taylor comes back, and then Zach Moss just goes nuts and puts up a monster game running and receiving. So that's a nice problem to have, I guess, if you're the Colts. You don't just have – although it does kind of raise the question. There's a certain degree of comedy to the idea of, we finally give Jonathan Taylor the money that he wants and that we didn't want to pay him, and immediately you're confronted with the evidence of why that's usually not a good idea. Because the backup that you put in there, basically because nobody else was available, goes for a monster day and puts up huge yardage and outperforms the dude that you just gave a ton of money to. Over a large period of time, that probably doesn't happen. It is, however, quite funny that it happens immediately upon giving him the money.
Zach Moss he's had a couple good games this year, though.
He's looked good.
Nice things, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we liked Zach Moss coming into the NFL. He's a good player, and now he's sort of in a decent situation. There's no reason he can't be a good complementary piece of that offense, and a good 1-2 punch with Jonathan Taylor.
Moss is funny because the same week he's similar to David Montgomery, a guy that will force a lot of missed tackles, but maybe not have the big play ability.
Not this week.
But it's ironic. Both Moss and Montgomery said, "No, we're big play threats this week."
I have breakaway speed.
Moss had a 56-yard touchdown in there, which was it was well blocked, but he took it to the house.
Yeah. Richardson kind of crushed on a tackle from behind as he's running to hurt his shoulder.
That's not going to help the narrative of running quarterbacks getting injured, whether it's true or not.
Yeah, and it probably is true, But
if you take more hits, yeah.
Yeah, and his style in particular, because he's in that Cam Newton, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen side of this, which is they're not beating you because they run a 4-3 and have moves on moves. They're beating you because they're huge and they can run over people, and they're threats as ball carriers because they're big, fast, and strong. If Richardson is going to be fragile, and look, we're dealing with one AC sprain and a concussion, right? Theoretically, those are 2 freak injuries. So maybe these are just the 2 injuries he's going to get right now. And from this point on, he's fine. But you have a problem if he's potentially fragile. Now you have to consider, crap, do we actually run him like this? And I saw Ted Wynn tweeted this yesterday. Stephen Holder from the Colts beat was sort of backing this up. Richardson has looked so good as a passer that they're already talking within the building of, do we effectively dump this idea of the Jalen Hurts offense, this run system that props him up for a while so that he can learn on the job? Do we just give him the conventional NFL offense that doesn't really require the quarterback running and all that kind of thing? That's how good he's looked from a pocket passing standpoint. And it's an interesting discussion to have, but I do feel that even if he's capable of that, I think there's value in the Eagles haven't abandoned the designed run game with Jalen Hurts, even though Jalen Hurts is now capable of putting a sort of MVP level season together, right? The Bills are still relying on Josh Allen to do what he does on the ground, even though Josh Allen is capable of playing at an MVP level. There's value to that element. Okay, maybe you want to dial it back a little bit because you don't need it to prop him up anymore. But that becomes an interesting dynamic of, can we abandon the run threat of Anthony Richardson? Is that do we lose what makes Richardson special if we do that?
I wonder if there's a balance too. And look, we're not going to see Richardson, as I said, likely for a month. For the 2 runs that he had, or the run where he got hurt, his design run where he goes outside and just he gets tackled, right? You said from behind. It wasn't crazy. His first run was a draw. He slides, right? He goes. That was a smart play. The other one is kind of a freak thing, but you don't know when. If you do run the ball 10 to 15 times, you don't know when the freak thing's going to happen. Right.
Like,
you also don't know if the freak thing's going to happen in the pocket, right? We see guys get, they break their hand on a helmet. They get the low blow on the knee, or so you get hurt in the pocket as well. So I don't think it's as simple as he got hurt, stop running. But now we're 5 weeks in. He got concussed on a run, a touchdown, and he's got the AC joint on a run where there's a zone keeper and he takes it to the outside. That's going to be a challenge. Mm-hmm. All that said, he looks good from the pocket, right? I mean, you're seeing him little, shoulder fakes with his eyes and moving defenders and hitting checkdowns. Again, I want to talk up like the QB process of Anthony Richardson so far. For a guy who's inexperienced, is very impressive. That's in addition to just having all of the physical tools. He had a big time throw in there yesterday early on. He had a bad play on a sack, tried to throw it away on a sack. I mean, those are the plays when he got sacked by Roger McCreary. Those are the plays that might lead to injury that I would be worried about. When you're throwing in the grasp and you're trying to like save a play instead of just taking the negative play, those are the ones I think are riskier. And that's the one, ironically, that didn't hurt him, right? He tries to throw it while he's going down, ends up throwing it backwards out of bounds, so it's technically a fumble. Those plays are riskier, I think, than just like a zone keeper where you get tackled.
And he was accurate in this game as well. Like that's been his quarterback process thing has actually always been pretty high level. Even in his college tape, you could see him doing fairly sophisticated quarterback stuff in terms of manipulating the pocket, using his eyes, like all that kind of stuff was actually pretty good. Even though he had zero experience whatsoever, he wanted to be a high-level pocket passer. The accuracy was an issue, and the accuracy has been an issue this season, even though every now and again he'll uncork an absolutely perfect, pinpoint, accurate pass. But overall, it's been rough. This game, it wasn't. Like, this game, he was accurate, and then he gets hurt, and we don't get to see the end of it, which is unfortunate. But, like, if Anthony Richardson is able to elevate his accuracy overall in a large weight of numbers so that over a full season he's even middle of the pack in terms of accurate quarterbacks, he can be a really high-level pocket passer, completely independent of whatever you're going to get out of him as an athletic rusher, a scrambler, or a part of the designed run game. And so it's unfortunate that we miss out on like a month of seeing that development.
So the two times Gardner Minshew has come in to relieve Anthony Richardson, he's been the two games 30 for 37 passing for 326 yards and a touchdown. Yesterday was similar. Minshew comes in, goes 11 for 14 for $155. Nice game by Josh Downs, the rookie, one of those rookie undersized receivers. Josh Downs trying to make a statement that he is up there with Zay Flowers and Tank Dell as we had in our rankings, but he has a career-high 97 yards. Mentioned Zach Moss with the huge day. And so all that said, at the end of the game, Tennessee has a chance to make the comeback. Ryan Tannehill gets hit while throwing and throws it up. Julian Blackmon gets the game-clinching interception to secure the win for the Colts, who are tied atop the AFC South now with the Jags at 3-2.
Titans turning Derrick Henry into a passing weapon. We had the sort of Tim Tebow-like passing play, was it last week? And then this week was more of a traditional sort of halfback option pass where he just out into the flat, on a wide play, and then throws it just too long for Nuke to get both feet down. Like 6 inches overthrown to stop him having 2 touchdowns in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever that was.
Using Tajay Spears in a unique way as well. 19-yard touchdown, getting him out in space.
So the end around.
Yeah, the end around. But that's how Tennessee scored, right? I mean, if they had pulled this game off, I would have flipped the narrative to like, well, Tennessee, this is why you got DeAndre Hopkins, right? But like this, Tennessee doesn't do anything if they don't have DeAndre Hopkins in this game. He has 8 catches for $140. Go ahead.
From 11 targets.
Yeah.
140 yards, which is what, 3 3.9 yards per route run, and that doesn't count the 6 inches overthrown pass from Derrick Henry.
Henry just missed him, and Tannehill, I think, just missed him in the end zone on one as well.
Production could have been just absolutely off the charts.
So, again, it didn't show up on the scoreboard. They only scored 16 points. They lose, but the value of having a DeAndre Hopkins, I think this team scores 3 points if they don't have Hopkins as the main target here. So I want to see what that looks like going forward because Nuke is still really good.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you want to force – like he still has these high target games where he is the impact player. You need complementary players. You got to put it all together. But
great play by Juju Brents, the rookie, on Nick Westbrook-Akina down the field. That was late in the game. It was a big not a swing play, but a big play for the Colts to avoid Tennessee getting a win.
Tennessee's offensive line held up a little bit better than expected, but again, the very last play of the game, Tannehill gets hit, that leads to the interception. It was desperation time at that point anyway. But
yeah, Nicholas Petit-Frere not back in the lineup yet. Chris Hubbard still out there at right tackle. Held up well.
All right, man. Anything else on this? Like I said, Colts 3-2, sitting atop the AFC South with the Jags. Jags have the tiebreaker so far. Let's go Atlanta 21, Houston Texans 19. This was a great game at the end here. Atlanta moves to 3-2. Texans fall to 2-3. It looked like C.J. Stroud had a nice
game-winning drive
comeback, game-winning drive. Beautiful throw for a touchdown to Dalton Schultz. Beautiful play call as well, I might add.
From PFF Bobby.
By PFF Bobby. Just saying, it was a great play. Jesse Bates, we'll talk about in a minute. But Desmond Ritter's best game on the other side for the Falcons. He leads the comeback the other way. Falcons win with a game-winning field goal, 21-19, to stay afloat in the NFC South.
No, this was a good game by Desmond Ridder. Big for him coming off such a crappy one previously, but 28 from 37 for 329 yards, a passing touchdown, a rushing touchdown as well. They still are tapping into this Desmond Ridder as a runner thing, which I think is really important for that offense. And then he ends up with a game-winning drive. Follows C.J. Stroud's game-winning drive with one of his own to get them into range and get that win.
Nice big pass to Drake London.
Drake London just took over on that game-winning drive. They just fed him the ball, and he made a bunch of plays. I thought Drake London looked really good in the game. I thought Ridder looked good. That's got to be his best career game, right?
Yeah, I think it has to. I mean, by far the best game he's played this season. It almost looked like, and this is what's tough when you're predicting in the NFL, right? A week ago, or the last 2 weeks, the Falcons' offense looks terrible. Mm-hmm. It looked like they came into this game and said, okay, little self-scout here. We're going to make life a little bit easier for Ridder. And, oh, by the way, all the offseason analysis that we had, it's like they remembered. We have Drake London. We have Kyle Pitts. We have these good playmakers. And they just kept running pretty much the same concept over and over, right? Kyle Pitts, inside in trips. They're going to run deep outs with him. They're going to run over routes with Kyle Pitts. So he has 7 catches for 87 yards. Beautiful back shoulder to Drake London. So he had a couple big plays in there. They got Jonnu Smith open when they needed to. That you just never know when that's going to strike. That Atlanta has all these playmakers, and if the QB just plays efficient, which Ridder did, got the ball out quickly and on time, read it high to low, and got the ball to the playmakers, it was a very good. I know they only ended up with 21 points, but it was a very good offensive performance for the Falcons because they got their good playmakers involved.
Yeah, it was. Are you ready for this, Mr. Home and Away Splits?
Yes.
Desmond Ridder
Ridder's got some good ones.
Is now 5-0 at home in the NFL. He was 26-0 at home in college. The man has never lost a home game dating back to high school.
How did I miss that?
Uh-huh.
How did I miss that?
You with your 5-game sample size for Tennessee. What about this?
Well, this is easy. I got the Falcons pegged for the rest of the year.
Right? We're 31-0 since high school.
Wow. That is amazing. I'm impressed.
That's crazy.
So normally when I see that, you blame the dome. Or you credit the dome. He's in the dome. Of course he's throwing the ball better in the dome. But Cincinnati's outdoors, yeah. It's right down the street here. I might be there this Saturday. I might go to the game.
We were there doing our rugby challenge.
We were there, yeah.
No dome?
No dome. I would blame the dome. Well, he threw the ball well. Yeah, that's a lot better. Bijan Robinson, 14 carries, forced 9 missed tackles.
Fumbled though, right? Or
He
dropped?
did have a fumble in there. He had a fumble in there. Only 46 yards. Yeah, it's another one. Like the Texans had the lowest run defense grade in the NFL coming in. They kept Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier to almost nothing.
We don't chart this, right? It feels like we should, but Bijan must lead the league in one-handed catches already.
No, we don't chart that, but every catch in the flats, just like, yep.
Yeah,
yeah.
And it's usually slightly off target because, Desmond, but like just reaches back, plucks it out of the sky one-handed. This time he almost like went behind the back, getting it, in control, and then took off. But like every catch he has feels like a one-handed catch.
Yeah, love that guy. Love watching him play. So Stroud plays another decent game. I almost said Nathaniel. Tank Dell's getting open left and right.
Until he got concussed.
3 catches for 57 yards for him. But Jesse Bates had made a really nice pass breakup earlier in the game, and the Texans kind of set him up with Dalton Schultz. They faked a little over route and then went vertical. It was really an outstanding setup, and that was the game winner. And so that would have been a fun narrative if the Texans held on, right? C.J. Stroud, it wasn't his best statistical game, but he still hasn't thrown an interception 5 weeks in. He did throw one that Bates broke on that he probably should have. I mean, it's not like he's without turnover-worthy plays.
Right.
But Stroud has played, I think, continued better and better.
Really
and
good.
then they set him up for the game winner, and he hit it, and it was a nice throw, and it was a beautiful little comeback by Stroud.
That's the thing. I think that play is a perfect example of the balance that is going on. Like it's the combination of PFF Bobby and Stroud. It's not either one of those guys gets all the credit and the other one gets none. It's the combination of the two of them are working really well. When you look at that play, it's a great play call. As you said, they set up the DB. It wasn't just a tight ends running down the seam, oh, he's open, hit him. It's they fake something that they showed him earlier in the game and then break back into the space. But Stroud has to hit it. And Stroud does a couple of things in the play. Number one, good eye discipline to not like stare it down the whole way, which is something that he did in college, right? And Justin Fields did this as well. You could do that at Ohio State. Defenses were not good enough, and the offense was so good, all you had to do was to drop back, stare at the guy you wanted to throw it to, and he's usually open because it's Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave or Marvin Harrison Jr., whoever you want to go to. Wait for him to be open and then fire the ball in his general direction. Can't do that in the NFL. Defenses are too good. We're seeing that with all these rookie quarterbacks. You stare at a guy down, the defenses are going to get there. So he doesn't do that. Good eye discipline. His right tackle is on skates, so he has to not get on the move, but he has to slide away from that pressure and still be able to deliver an accurate ball once he comes back to that tight end. So either one of those two things breaks down, the play doesn't work. If Bobby doesn't identify the thing from earlier in the game and the right thing that's going to create an open guy in the end zone, play is probably not a touchdown. Stroud doesn't maintain good eye discipline and slide away from the pressure that's coming from right tackle, it's not a touchdown either. It's the two working in concert that is why this offense has been so successful, in addition to, the receivers playing well, et cetera, et cetera. So I think you need to bring up one when you're talking about the other. You can't just say Stroud's great, end of story. He's the best rookie we've ever seen. Like, there's a line in this game where the commentator is doing their usual, like, it's hyperbole time. And it's like, the Texans have really found something with the second overall pick. You're like, well, that's kind of the idea. It's not like we unearthed the gem in the 6th round. Like, they found something with theoretically the second best player in the draft. So you have to, I think, bring up the job Bobby is doing when you're talking about him. But equally, as somebody that was not a Stroud believer pre-draft, you also have to acknowledge that Stroud is doing really well with what he's being given. Like, he's executing what Bobby has given him, and he's adding some stuff to it. It's not he's not just a product of what Bobby is dialing up.
It's interesting because I think the thing that is working, the reason why Stroud is making it work and having success is mechanics. Like, we don't talk mechanics a ton, but it just feels like he's
technically sound.
He's very technically sound. Footwork is outstanding, and he's ready to throw, right? And that's why the things we've highlighted the last few weeks, it's reaction throws, it's rolling out of the pocket when he needs to and hitting. I mean, there was a couple where he was kind of like inaccurate when he was rolling out, but he's rolling out, getting the ball to his team, to his receivers. I think mechanically he's so sound that he's ready to get through his progressions. Like you said, he's got the eye discipline to kind of set up baits for the game winner. A lot of those little things that often get glossed over in college, where you say, is this guy accurate? Does he have a good enough arm? Is he athletic? Does he make plays out of structure? And sometimes you forget the dude's just in position, ready to throw, and he's got good footwork. And when you're playing with an offense where you have to, have your footwork tied to your throwing mechanics, Stroud's executing it extremely well. So, look, I know the Texans lost. They fall to 2-3, but very encouraging there still offensively for Houston. And then Atlanta, I try to have, when I'm watching games, I'm trying to think, what's my big takeaway? When Atlanta gets efficient QB play, just as we said at the beginning of the year, when they get efficient QB play, they're dangerous. Because, again, overall, Jesse Bates has been fantastic this year. He made some plays on the ball. They've got some more dudes up front, and Atlanta's a dangerous team, when they're not turning it over as they had in recent weeks.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that helped the quarterback on both sides of this game is that neither team generated pretty much anything when it came to pass rushing.
Yep.
The leading pressure getter in the entire game had 3 pressures and a pass rush win rate of less than 15%. So that is a recipe for passing success and quarterback production.
All right, man. Good game. Falcons 3-2. They're just behind the 3-1 Bucs now in the NFC South, tied with the Saints, both at 3-2. You notice my voice is a little bit better this week. I've been chugging my AG1.
It is. It's better.
Gets me back on track. I got all my daily nutrients at the beginning of every day. Give AG1 a try like I am because, if you're sick or just to avoid sickness, get those nutrients. First thing in the morning, I take it with my coffee, and I am ready to go, even when we start at 7 a.m. It gives me the nutrition that my body craves, Sam, because I'm not getting it from eating vegetables. I'm kind of like Al Michaels with eating vegetables. So you got to get those nutrients from somewhere.
Think Al drinks AG1?
Well, no.
Well, does that get an end around the process? Al doesn't want any part of a vegetable, but what if you get the vegetable in drink form?
As much as I'm encouraging everyone to drink AG1, there is no way this will touch Al Michaels' lips. And but you guys are different. You're not like Al.
I'm not built like Al.
All great athletes have one thing in common, not announcers. They take care of their bodies. So a huge part of that starts with optimizing whole body health. A lot of them drink AG1, right? That's why I'm a huge fan, not because of what Al Michaels does. With every daily serving, I'm setting myself up for success with 75 high-quality ingredients that give me the key daily nutrients to support energy, focus, strength, and clarity. It's a micro habit that delivers macro benefits, and that's why we use AG1 every single day. Just mix one small scoop with water, drink it first thing in the morning, and you're done. I also like that it costs less than $3 a day. Pretty good, if you ask me. So it's a comprehensive solution that you need for your supplement routine. Then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/PFF. That's drinkag1.com. That's the number 1. drinkag1.com/PFF. Go check it out right now. All right, let's go. Detroit Lions 42, Carolina Panthers 24. Lions, man, they moved to 4-1, and not just 4-1. They're starting to dominate, right? Like we said, coming into this game, 9.5-point spread when we recorded last Wednesday. It's different territory here.
If they hadn't dropped that game to the Seahawks, would we be talking about the Lions as the best team in the NFL?
No, because the 49ers and Eagles exist.
Yeah.
But there'd be more of a conversation. I think they had one. It looks like just one blip so far against Seattle.
Right.
Who's not a bad team.
The 49ers have looked incredible, but the Eagles have been wobbly for a bit.
But there's a track record with the Eagles.
Sure, but right? I think you could make the case. The Seattle game doesn't happen, and you could make the argument that Detroit's resume is better than Philadelphia's at this point.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. No, Detroit, what I wrote down in my notes here, too, is the thing I say about the Eagles all the time is now Detroit can kind of win in different ways. There are games where their defense will step up. Their pass rushers will step up. I'm still a little concerned that it's Aiden and friends up front, that it's maybe not enough. But he had a monster game again yesterday, including the interception. The other thing that's interesting to me, I kind of like David Montgomery as their battering ram. So there's a lot of fans who are just – Jahmyr Gibbs didn't play in this game, but they're upset that Jahmyr Gibbs isn't getting all the carries. And it feels like David Montgomery's just trudging along for 3 yards a pop over and over and over again. But last week, it was against the Packers. It did feel like that old school kind of like wear you down and stick with it against the Packers last week. And then in this one, Montgomery breaks out for the 42-yard touchdown. And I kind of like him as the battering ram when you also have all the other playmakers around that. They got Sam Laporta open behind the defense, schemed up again.
Same trick play the 49ers ran.
Same play the 49ers ran.
How does that happen? It's like the exact same play. There's no way Shanahan stole it from like earlier that afternoon.
It's not the first time it's ever been run.
No, obviously, but for two teams to run it the same day,
yeah, I don't know.
A little weird.
It is interesting, but that's the thing about Detroit, right? Ben Johnson's calling the plays, and Jared Goff's playing well, right? Like what you said about Stroud.
Yeah.
That's why the Lions are good. I keep interrupting myself. They're good everywhere. Yeah, they're good everywhere. Goff is playing great ball right now.
This might be the best Jared Goff we've ever seen.
Yes.
In any offense.
I was making these random cutoffs in a couple podcasts ago, and I said, hey, since week 14 of last year, Jared Goff's the highest graded quarterback. Well, by the end of this week, he might be QB1 for this season, Goff. So he is a stretch, the best ball that he's played, in addition to Ben Johnson dialing it up, in addition to the battering ram of a running back that David Montgomery is, and all the fun playmakers that they have. Khalif Raymond still making big plays, Laporta, Josh Reynolds. It's looking good in Detroit for sure.
Yeah, and they did this with no Amon-Ra St. Brown. Didn't play in the game. Jameson Williams comes back, has a drop in there. It's not great. David Montgomery looked fantastic, broke off a long run, not just the battering ram, not just the guy making plays in a phone booth, but actually gets on the edge and has the breakaway speed to turn into a big play. Yeah, the Lions doing that without their theoretically best player on offense was very impressive. And then defense was kind of the same story. Is Aiden Hutchinson unusually good at sniffing out screens? Because he's now gotten quite a lot of interceptions in his career for a dude who's an edge rusher.
I think it's the fact that he just completes the pass, because when most edge defenders sniff out screens.
Like Trey Hendrickson almost had one yesterday where he could have, should have had a pick six.
Those were, not to make my late 90s Jags reference, but Tony Brackens back in the day.
Big screen guy?
No, he was the ball magnet. He was like TJ Watt. Always strip sacks, but he was the guy that would, like, instead of batting a pass, would just catch it, right? Or intercept the screen. And I do love that from edge defenders when they're so athletic that they are forcing turnovers, either in the screen game or from, reading the quarterback's eyes and, just snagging it out of the air. Hutchinson, that was incredible. Because again, most of the times you sniff out a screen, you're either holding up the running back, or you're waiting for him to catch it and you're tackling him. But Hutchinson gets in there and picks it off.
Yeah, it's just one-handed, stabs it out of stuns it, sticks out a hand, stuns the ball as it's trying to fly past him, and then is able to grab the ball that's now just hovering in the air from where he got it. Just incredible play. I feel like he's going to be one of these guys that is actually, I think he has a really good feel for those plays, those screens, those when something is a little off, and he understands how to just drop back or shuffle slightly into the throwing lane and cause problems, and then is coordinated enough or has good enough ball skills to not just break it up or get in the way of it, but actually potentially pick it off when that happens. Hutchinson continues to look like a phenomenal player for them.
So just before the half, you get Bryce Young throws an interception, and this is where it does feel different for the Lions, right? They force a turnover. It was a bad misread by Bryce. I think this is the one, right? The bad misread of cover two
corner.
Throws to the cover two corner, something Jared Goff used to do.
Yeah.
Remind me, Troy Aikman catching all sorts of strays in this game in the graphics. It was pretty hilarious. I'll tell you in a second if you didn't see it.
Didn't.
But used to make fun of Goff all the time. Why you can't see the cover two corner? Bryce Young, same thing. Goff hit the cover two shot. I mean, again, he's throwing the ball extremely well. But the Lions get the turnover before the half. They're already in control of the game. That's when they hit the Laporta, the sudden change, trick play to get behind the defense. I think I had the game on mute because I'm watching all the games, and I kept seeing these graphics pop up. And I think it was either an excuse. It was either a way to compare Bryce Young and Jared Goff, or a way to say, hey, it doesn't matter how bad it starts for Bryce Young. Look at these other guys. So they were trying to show number 1 overall picks, and it was like Bryce Young, Eli, Peyton, Aikman, and Goff, and how bad they started, right? Bad record, bad touchdown to interception ratio. But it was like Aikman showed up in all of these graphics, like how bad he started back in '89. So there's one with all the Mannings and everything, and then there was one that was just Goff and Aikman starting like 0-7 with like a million interceptions or whatever. And I think the narrative was going to be, hey, Bryce Young, Goff came out of it, look at him now. Bryce Young can do that as well as a number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, so Bryce Young's start has been pretty concerning. Jared Goff, I think, is actually the player that I was trying to bring to mind yesterday when I was like, so a few people have made the point of like some of the mistakes that Bryce Young is making at the moment. Look, the situation is bad. That's obvious, right? His offensive line isn't good. His receivers aren't good. Bryce Young isn't playing well. It's not a good collective. It's not a good situation to be in. But he's also making mistakes that you simply did not see in college. His Alabama tape does not feature lofting the ball straight to a cover 2 corner who's always going to be there, right? Like that is a play he understood not to make in college and doesn't seem to understand not to make them in the NFL, and that's weird. But I think if you're looking for the player, like, so you start thinking, well, how many guys have done that like early in their NFL career and come out of the other side of it and been really good? And I don't, like, the game has changed so much that Peyton Manning is irrelevant. The game, like, forget Troy Aikman. Like, Peyton Manning's, it was always the cautionary tale of, that guy led the league in interceptions. Yeah, but, like, 1998 it's a different, it's not the same game. So, throw that out. Jared Goff is the guy where you look at what he was doing as a rookie, and it's just start to finish, catastrophic, ridiculous mistakes, terrible. And now, as you say, Jared Goff is arguably the number 1 quarterback in the NFL this year, is playing absolutely fantastically. That's what Bryce Young needs to be able to get to. Like, this is bad, but everything is bad. Let's get to the other side of it. Because I don't – it's hard to defend at this point, like the performance that Bryce Young is having at the moment. It's been pretty rough.
It has, and I also feel like the last few weeks have been – better, right? I mean, they've been baby steps in the right direction.
It's never going to stop being funny. Yeah,
I said that last week.
But so, in addition to Bryce Young's baby steps, did you see they took him out for the QB sneak?
Oh, did they?
Like, that guy can't. Too lightweight to run a QB sneak.
Maybe
Andy Dalton's
so good at
QB sneak specialist. You know how much? So Andy Dalton, you know how much he outweighs Bryce Young by? 35 pounds. Now I'm using 185 as Bryce Young's weight because I'm not buying 205 weight at the combine with water. Because it doesn't exist.
You just can't get over this.
He doesn't weigh 205 pounds. He doesn't. Simply does not. The man weighs 185 soaking wet, and that means Andy Dalton outweighs him by 35 pounds. So it's probably the right choice to have him as a QB sneak quarterback. Unless you think that Bryce Young is so small that he has like a mouse-like scurrying ability to find the gap.
I'm just over the Bryce Young
weasel his way in there.
And size discussion.
It's just QB sneaks. It's relevant.
Maybe.
Particularly in this world.
I kind of like the idea of a QB sneak specialist. Jacoby Brissett did that a couple years ago. Jared Goff's career is fascinating. His stretch of play in 2016 as a rookie, first off, he didn't get on the field until about week 11. Mm-hmm. Couldn't beat out Case Keenum. It was Jeff Fisher's last year as a head coach. The offense was atrocious. And then Jared Goff came in and maybe played worse than the atrocious offense. It was poor overall. We were Jared Goff fans being like, man, we missed it. And then Sean McVay comes in 17, looks completely different. 18, Goff, that was probably the best that Goff ever played was year 3 until now. Year 3 was 2018. They go to the Super Bowl. 19, it falls apart. Like there's been all these ups and downs, and Jared Goff has been kind of the classic mid-tier quarterback who goes up with his scheme, goes down when the offensive line falls apart, and is very dependent on everything around him. And even his last couple of years in Detroit, we're like, the grade's not great, it's not there, but the stats are. Now they're both matching, and so, a Lions fan might be like, hey, we told you Jared Goff was they told you to trust the stats. But I think what we're actually seeing here from Goff is when you have the scheme still good and he's making the throws, right? He's not getting away with stuff and he's adding value. Like he added value yesterday, throwing guys open, back shoulders. He's adding value with his arm. That's where Detroit's dangerous right now. And that's where their pass game is dangerous, and pairing that with the run game with Montgomery. So, so that's a little bit of give credit to Jared Goff and what's happening in Detroit. And then, oh, by the way, no matter what it looks like for Bryce Young, you might – it's not – Bryce Young right now through 5 games is way better than what we saw from Goff's first 5 to 7 games in 2016. Right. If that doesn't mean it's going to always get better, but if it's any comfort – for Goff, Panthers fans who are 0-5 right now.
You sort of tend to think at the moment that good quarterbacks in the NFL these days start good, and if they don't, it's a worry. But Goff is the example of the other side. It doesn't always go that way, and you can have a really rough start and still come good at the other end. Adam Thielen had a great game. The guy that's being held up as like he's Carolina's version of Jacoby Myers. It's like he's emblematic of the problem. The receivers that can't get open or make any plays, and this is why Bryce Young can't survive at this level. Thielen had a really good game yesterday.
He's kind of been rejuvenated in the slot. I mean, he's not as dynamic as he was before, but when you morph, to me, it's more like late career Reggie Wayne, where like Reggie Wayne wasn't going to beat anybody on the outside anymore, but you stick him in the slot and he's going to be open against zone coverage and everything. Like Thielen's doing that.
He still knows where to go and how to beat. Like he's a great. It's all Reggie Wayne is a good one. Or remember when Miles Austin was amazing and it was like 100% just what was there, what was schemed open. He understood how to get to the right place within the scheme, but he's not going to win in man coverage anymore.
That's why going into this week, it was the rumors were Carolina's looking to trade for a receiver. Now they already don't. They're already out of a lot of draft capital because of the trade up for Bryce Young.
Right.
But absolutely, right? You said DeAndre Hopkins to Carolina to help Bryce Young. Imagine if they did have Hopkins on the outside, and now you've got this dude who's going to beat man coverage, or you just throw it up to him, and you have Thielen. It would make things look a lot smoother, I bet.
Yeah, I mean, my point was you bring in Hopkins as a bridge. You don't bring him in because when this team is good in 2 years' time, he's now at the end of his time, and it doesn't sync up. Like, you look what the Colts have done with Jonathan Taylor. As much as you agree or disagree with that contract, they've basically tied it in sync with Richardson's cheap money, right? So that when Richardson's cheap, Jonathan Taylor is getting money, and when Richardson stops being cheap, Jonathan Taylor's contract runs out, right? That would have been the Nuke Hopkins move. When Bryce Young is young and cheap and not costing you a ton of money, Hopkins can be your bridge guy so that he's actually got somebody to throw to. And then at the point where Bryce Young is now good and everything's getting better, you don't need Hopkins anymore. You can go get a new receiver. But they didn't do that.
All right, let's get to the 4 o'clock game. Cincinnati Bengals 34, Arizona Cardinals 20. Bengals finally light up the scoreboard a little bit, Sam. Includes a pick 6 just before the half. Joe Burrow finishes 36 of 46 for 317 and 3 scores. But most importantly, it was Jamar Chase Day. 15 catches for $192 and 3 touchdowns, all of which happened in different ways, using Jamar Chase all over the field. They had a 63-yard touchdown that turned back the clock a little bit. Hey, Jamar Chase can still get behind the defense. So got to be encouraging for Bengals fans here as they move to 2-3.
Yeah, but I think by far the most important aspect of that was this looked like a different version of Joe Burrow. Like, this was not the last game we saw where everything was short. He didn't look comfortable driving off that leg. He couldn't move around in the pocket that well. Like, you thought, if that's the version of Joe Burrow we're going to get for the rest of the season, it doesn't even matter if you're going to lose. Shut him down because you're not winning like that. This was a different player. I mean, he had more zip on the ball. It was noticeable that he had more juice in that arm. He had that deep bomb to Jamar Chase where he had to drive off that leg and, put some oomph into it. He had some plays where the pocket broke down or he had to get on the move, and instead of just like falling over, like a tree being felled, he bounced, right? He jumped and started hopping around the place and started making some plays on the move. So
he didn't look scared of contact in this game,
which he did, previously. So that, I think, was a really big game for the Bengals and for Burrow, that we actually might come out of the other side of this and we get much more like the old version of Joe Burrow. And then, as our friend Paul Dehner pointed out, when you're in a self-proclaimed must-win game, go back to what works, right? Which is just throw the ball at Jamar Chase until it stops working. And, it didn't stop working. So,
no, man, he had 14 first down, 11 first downs and 3 touchdowns. We combine those as a number there. I mean, he was the guy. You have T. Higgins hurt, missing the game, and Trent Irwin, catching a bunch of passes, but it was Jamar Chase, man. And look, where I was a little worried, I think, for Cincinnati is if you were only using Jamar Chase as a, put him inside in the slot and move him around and throw screens to him. He's good at all that stuff. He's fine. But when you pair it with the 63-yarder, right, you pair it with, okay, we're also going to take deep shots with him because he's not Tyreek Hill. He's not completely like Tyreek Hill, but I always made the statement, you could have Tyreek Hill fill any role in the offense, right? If you wanted Tyreek Hill to average 25 yards per catch, he could do that. If you wanted him to catch 100, like Tyreek Hill could catch 180 balls a year if you really wanted him to. And it wouldn't be an inefficient offense. You could just throw him screens and let him go. Chase is good at everything, but he's special down the field, and you have to have that as part of the offense. You also saw his special athleticism, 2 scramble drill touchdowns, 1 where he's running the back line. He just outruns the defense. So, yeah, get Jamar Chase involved and get back to what works. And, the fantasy people call this the squeaky wheel game, Sam. Because remember, Jamar had a little rant last week. I'm always open, right? So the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
It wasn't really a rant.
It wasn't really a rant, but it was a thing that made it into the media with a 1-3 Bengals team. When they were in the news, it was Jamar Chase was mad. He's upset. He wants to win. So it was a little bit of a squeaky wheel game for the Bengals. Hey, we're going to feed you 19
also,
targets.
Yeah, I mean, T. Higgins didn't end up playing with his broken rib.
Right.
Thank God, because, again, every time I think about that, I'm like, how is that even? Anyway, didn't play. Irv Smith Jr. is working his way back from injury, as is usually the case with Irv Smith Jr. But it's like you didn't have that many other options. You know what I mean? It was Jamar Chase, and then it was one of those Trenton Irwin games, right? The random Trenton Irwin game that surfaces every year, where Trenton Irwin has 8 catches for 60 yards and 10 targets. He was their secondary receiver in this game. So yeah, I mean, a lot of the passes were going to go in the direction of Jamar Chase, and that makes the most sense.
So Arizona, who I've called among the very many feisty teams in the NFL.
Dude, they are. I enjoy watching the Cardinals a lot. They are not going to go quietly into the night, even when they're overmatched and down and in a hole. They're going to fight back.
And they were, man. So Bengals get up 10-0, and at first it's like, well, okay, yeah, that makes they should be a better team. Right. Bengals are back. And the Cardinals come back. Josh Dobbs hits Marquise Brown on a beautiful slot fade, hits Zach Ertz for a 4-yard touchdown. We're going into the half, and Arizona's up 14-10. Bengals drive down. They get to the goal line, and Arizona makes a goal line stand. It's like they're ready to do it again. Goal line stand. They're going to go into the half up 4.
On 4 downs. They held them on 3rd. They were like, great, we did it. And then the Bengals went for it on 4th. They held them again.
Stuffed on 4th down. And Arizona's coming out of the end zone, and Josh Dobbs throws a pick 6 to Cam Taylor-Britt. Not sure exactly what happened on the play, what miscommunication, if it was off. Cam Taylor-Britt walks in for a pick 6 with 10 seconds left in the half.
Josh Dobbs, I still thought, looked pretty good. He had 2 picks, and I don't know if either of them was entirely his fault. The one you talked about just there, like, it was high. Looked like it was still catchable. I don't know. So I think it was a zone blitz, or maybe they just dropped out of the blitz look, but they dropped 2 guys basically into the area where he was targeting. So at the minimum, it was kind of a misread anyway. But I think 2 guys dropping into that space maybe spooked him, and just I think like the ball sailed on him a little bit. I don't know if he sort of midway throwing realized there were guys in that area and the ball floated a bit. Either way, that turning into a pick 6 felt harsh. And similarly, the other one, like, gets into the hands of a receiver and bounces and ends up as a pick as well. It's like, Josh Dobbs has been playing well and is impressive.
What happened?
But it feels like that guy needs luck rather than bad luck.
All right, I'm rewatching the play for the people here.
Now, that being said, he also threw the ball straight to a linebacker on a play that didn't get intercepted. So it's not like he was perfectly clean outside of that.
It looks like they ran the wrong concept to that side. So there's an underneath receiver. I think it goes off the underneath receiver's hands. And it's really an incredible play by Cam Taylor-Britt to actually catch it. So he's throwing a slant, and there's a stick route right under it. There's no way
he's throwing to the slant? Okay, that makes sense.
He's throwing to the slant. It goes off the stick receiver.
Right.
There's no way he's supposed to run that. He's probably supposed to run a flat and not supposed to be there. Instead, he runs the stick. It goes off his hands. incredible because there's still a ton of velocity on the ball, and it goes right into Taylor Britt's hands, and then he runs it in. It's really an incredible catch. I said incredible 900 times there, but that was a good play.
Either way, it feels like
that's not on Dobbs. That's really it looks like the slot receiver ran the right.
But I think there may have been some confusion by the fact that 2 defenders were dropped into that general vicinity from what looked like an all-out blitz at the goal line.
But part of that's also, I think the slot ran the wrong route and probably brought a defender there. Anyway, that was the turning point for the Bengals because they go into the half leading and then they come out of it, hit the 63-yarder to Jamar Chase, and Cincinnati looks much better now after that 1 week. It's against Arizona, but they needed something, right? If they're calling it must win.
Yeah, it's the fact that it is the fact that I think the Burrow looks so much better. But the Cardinals are so fun to watch. Like, they are going to fight they're not dead in any game. Even when you think they're toast, even when you know you're probably going to beat them, they're going to make it difficult. They reminded me of, Rounders, the movie with Matt Damon and John Malkovich.
I do know the movie,
yada, yada. You know that part where, like, Malkovich can't get rid of Mike McDermott? You know, he's just hanging around. You know, all that.
Yeah.
That's what the Cardinals are. They're just hanging around. Can't get rid of them. Dead all the time. And also,
can you give me a little give that man his money?
No, I don't have a good give that man his money. I don't do that part. Don't have a good you.
I have a few go-to impressions. I used to do that one. Haven't done it in years. Not ready to drop it right now. Voice is still recovering.
No, I think cold is when you do that. You can't.
No.
You got to give it like the golf shot, right?
Give me a week.
Don't give the practice swings. Just walk right up and hit
I'll
that
save
thing.
it for when we pay out our bets at the end of the year.
Rondale Moore, direct snap, zoom, touchdown.
Zoom, zoom.
Zoom, zoom. Rondale Moore is getting the zoom, zoom plays. It's working. The Cardinals are, I think they're one of the most entertaining teams in the NFL to watch. They're not great, but you're going to get a good game watching them.
Isn't that a perfect season for the Cardinals, though? Show that you've got some life. Show that you've got a foundation to build upon. And by all means, get 2 really good draft picks for this team next year. Because they're 1-4, but very competitive.
If they hadn't beaten Dallas, this would be like the perfect Cardinal season so far. You've been really, really feisty, and every game is a must-watch, but you're losing all of them. But they go and beat Dallas. It's like that drops you 10 draft spots.
It does.
And the fact that Houston actually looks half decent isn't helping either.
All right, let's go to Philadelphia Eagles 23, Los Angeles Rams 14. Eagles moved to 5-0. And this was another entertaining game. It was another one where the Eagles, it felt like they had the ball forever. And they did. 38 minutes, time of possession. One of those where time of possession is an overrated stat for sure, like in isolation. But this game, it meant something because the Eagles were, 13 of 19 on third down, 13 of 18 on third down. And they just controlled the ball. Like when the Rams got the ball.
Particularly second half.
Yeah. So the Eagles just controlled the game, and the Rams didn't have enough opportunities to come back, basically. I mean, that's why it mattered.
The Eagles chewed up most of the second half with 2 field goal drives.
I will say I'm a little sick of the double cheek push, brotherly shove. I'm sick of it now. I'm over it.
So
I just don't think you should be able to push the ball carrier.
Yeah, but you can, so deal with it.
But you couldn't for years, and they had it right.
And now you can. During the week, there were a lot of people making the argument, because the Eagles have been so unusually successful at this and everybody else has not, that it's got nothing to do with the push. It's Jalen Hurts and his ability to squat 600 pounds. Other teams don't have that, therefore their success doesn't work, right? So the Eagles ran it how many times? Like at least 3, maybe 4 in this game. I decided, because this was a thing, everyone's going, unpopular take, it's all Jalen Hurts and his squatting ability. I decided to watch these, the
execution is outstanding.
Anybody that thinks that this is Jalen Hurts and his ability to squat and not the actual push is simply not watching these plays. Because all 3 of the ones that I remember from this game were stalled on the initial push. Yes. And then the push came in and drove going. The third one, I'm pretty sure Hurts was airborne for the entire time. The dude with the hand under the cheek was driving him over the pile over the first down line.
Are you trying to go Manning viral here by a little?
No, man, I would never deem to put myself on the level of Manning when it comes to articulating where the hand and the cheek needs to be. The man described it perfectly. I would never dare. I'm simply saying that the Eagles, the reason it's successful is all of it works. The offensive line is great and slightly cheating with, lining up offside, et cetera, et cetera. Jalen Hurts is a strong, powerful quarterback. I'm sure that helps. And the push part of it is being executed to perfection. You watch a lot of these other teams, the two guys lining up behind are not really doing anything. They're like theoretically supposed to be helping, but they just kind of lean into a pile. The Eagles dudes, each of them gets an arm on the buttocks or the lower, the upper thigh of Jalen Hurts. And from either side, they are launching him over the pile. Like, it's the double cheek push part is why it's working.
I thought our friend JT O'Sullivan, through his QB School account, had a very good take on it. I'll just read it instead of stealing it.
Cool.
The thing about the tush push that I don't think gets talked about enough is the feet of damn near all the Eagles. They seem to never stop their feet. O-line, the edges, Hurts, and the pushers, right? They are, and I don't know what you would do in rugby here, it does feel like technique-wise, like everyone else is treating it like a QB sneak. The offensive line just kind of like cuts, right? They go low, and they're trying to create a spot for the push.
They're driving.
They are driving, right? They are absolutely driving. And that's why I think you see stall and then boom.
And they do it. You're right. They do both of it because you watch that offensive line and they do that cut thing, and then somehow they all seem to get back on their feet and start driving again.
There's a different technique that Philadelphia is performing, because you're seeing this. When I say I'm sick of it, it is because I actually like the nuance of the QB sneak. I actually like
this is even more nuanced.
Yeah, but the QB has to like do the work on the sneak. I like when the QB has to do the work, find the right gap. You see double A and you have to audible out, maybe do a wide zone. I like that game, right? I don't like the game of like play rugby. I don't like rugby, right? So I don't like that. But I like the nuance of having multiple QB sneaks at your disposal, having audibles off of that. I like that. I like that little cat and mouse game. But you're seeing it in college football a ton now. You're seeing it all over the place, and the execution isn't as good as the Eagles. It's way too much time on the brotherly shove, tush push, double cheek push, whatever you want to call it. But Jalen Hurts has another one of his classic games. I mean, the Eagles are like creating different looking box scores. 15 carries for 72 yards for Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts had some amazing runs in this game. I mean, a variety of different runs. Forget the double cheek push stuff, but he had runs with power where he ran people over, with balance where he was making good cuts, setting up blocks. There was one where he like threatened to go one gap, waited till the defender jumped that way, and then bounced back into the other one. Like, this was an amazing Jalen Hurts rushing game.
There was one other very subtle play that it may have ended up in a throwaway, but I thought was outstanding. When Hurts broke the pocket, he did a little jab step one way, because you know how difficult it is for a four-man rush to keep a mobile quarterback in the pocket.
Yeah.
He did a little jab step one way like he was going to roll left, and then spun around right, and everybody bit. And he got to the edge. And it was just, I don't know, those subtle things, right? When I say that the Eagles have multiple ways to win, it's all of that stuff added up. Because on top of this, A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert both go over 100 yards. A.J. Brown, again, uncoverable in the secondary, creating those big plays. They didn't need to get anything from Devontae Smith in this game, and they're still able to win. They have so many different ways to win. This was a Dallas Goedert game. It was an A.J. Brown game. And then Jalen Hurts on the ground.
Yeah, Devontae Smith, though, found himself in something of a decoy role. So you're starting to see now this short motion stuff that Miami is using or has been using all season. Everybody's stealing it, right? We're a few weeks into the season. Everybody's seen that and is thieving it. Philadelphia was using it a bit in this game with Devontae Smith. They had him being the short motion guy, and instead of being the Tyreek Hill wide open thing, they were kind of using him as a decoy to attract defenders, I think. And then that was where the Dallas Goedert and some of the A.J. Brown plays are coming from. So this game was really interesting from a schematic standpoint. You had the nuance of the double cheek push that you hate. You have the Rams going for it in 4th and 1 in a different way because Matthew Stafford is like the worst quarterback sneak quarterback of all time. You got the Eagles stealing the short motion stuff. You've also got officials, by the way, have just taken to completely ignoring like forward motion at the snap. It's now like full CFL rules. We're just run towards the line of scrimmage, go nuts, I don't care anymore. There was always a degree to which they gave you a little bit of wiggle room at that. Now with all this short motion, it's like they've just open season. Just do whatever you like.
Yeah.
There was a play where Puka Nacua was like running at the line of scrimmage, and they're saying, yeah, close enough, whatever.
I mean, if the tackles can go backwards, the receivers can go forward.
I guess.
Puka Nacua, there was Stafford with a nice fade to Nacua, who gets the touchdown. He had 7 catches for 71 yards, and Cooper Kupp came back, catches 8 for 118, and looked like Cooper Kupp.
First demonstration that they do function simultaneously. They work in conjunction. It's not now that Cooper Kupp is back, Puka Nacua disappears. Like, he can function in the same offense at the same time.
The one last thing we certainly have to mention here, the Eagles in the trenches.
Yeah.
Their pass protection. And look, I know when you're running misdirection and play action, you're doing all these things, it's easier to slow down the pass rush, but it looks like Aaron Donald's going to have. Every time Aaron Donald has one of his worst games of all time, it's like, wow, how'd they do that? What happened? Did they scheme around? What was it? But it looks like Donald is going to end up with one of his worst pass rush games of all time, if not his worst. And it wasn't just him, because no one got pressure.
Right.
Most of the pressure came from Ernest Jones, a linebacker.
With, by the way, a backup guard. I mean, Cam Jurgens is now on IR, right? So Sua Apita was in at right guard and played fine. Like, that's usually a backup right guard going up against Aaron Donald is a recipe for a train wreck. And it didn't. By the way, another interesting schematic wrinkle. At one point, the Rams had managed to call a defensive scheme that had your guy listed at whatever he is, 310 pounds, but
Hoyt.
probably, yeah. Michael Hoyt, who at some point was an interior lineman listed at over $3 billion, is now, I think, a slimmed down version of that, playing outside linebacker, was in that like overhang role where he's sort of stepped out covering the slot-ish, and then they had Dallas Goedert running like a slot fade, and Hoyt has to turn and run with him down the sideline. It's like, whatever that defensive play is, burn it immediately. That's the worst thing I've ever seen happen from a defensive matchup point of view. You took a guy who's listed at over 300 pounds, is now covering Dallas Goedert down the seam. Stop it. Get rid of that now.
That's what I'm saying. Like, he's dropped. Hoyt has dropped into coverage. He had 10 snaps in coverage, 31 grade.
Yeah, but there's like drop into coverage, let's cover a hook curl, and there's, I have to turn and run down the sideline with this tight end.
Even if it's hook curl, though, you can run 4 verts and make him carry. Like, you can exploit those matchups. That was like back in the day when Von Miller was playing Sam linebacker.
Right.
And all you needed to do was run base personnel, and Von Miller was a linebacker, and you could dictate his role. Mm-hmm. Look, I'm just saying, you can make Michael Hoyt cover your tight ends and slot receivers if you want, the way the Rams are playing defense right now. So
yeah,
keep an eye on it going forward. Anyway, credit the Eagles. I think they're not crushing teams. So the analytics folks aren't loving, say, like the point differential for the Eagles. They're not dominating. But in a game like this, like, they dominated and won, to win by 9. They dominated, right? Because they held the ball. They're not going to be explosive in the second half when they have their lead. They're going to sit on the ball and play rugby, and it might not show up in point differential, but they dominated.
And they're doing it whilst quite banged up. I mean, this is a point to remember when we're talking about whether they've been as dominant as maybe people wanted them to or expected them to, or think they need to be if they're going to win a Super Bowl. I mean, Eli Ricks was playing significant snaps yesterday. Eli Ricks had played, I think, 1 snap on defense coming into that game. Remember, their linebackers have all been banged up. Nakobe Dean was supposed to be the starting middle linebacker. He's been hurt and out for a while. This is a very banged up Eagles team relative to expectations. We talked about the backup right guard playing, going up against Donald. So for them to be that in control whilst being that banged up, I think is impressive.
All right, let's go. New York Jets 31, Denver Broncos 21. Jets move to 2-3. Broncos fall to 1-4. And Nathaniel Hackett gets the game ball. Jets offensive coordinator back to Denver and gets the revenge, man.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers knew. You see him tweeting about it?
He knew.
W. Hackett.
Going to make for great Star Wars memes
See,
this week.
Aaron Rodgers, I feel, is the perfect type of petty to revel in the victory that is, right? Huge W for the Jets. You know, Sean Payton comes out and is like, that's one of the worst coaching jobs ever. Yada, yada. Blowtorches Nathaniel Hackett publicly. You know, he was right, but you don't say that, you know? And saying it, you break that kind of brotherhood and people get upset by it. Rodgers is the kind of like, he's so petty, he's going to remember that and he's going to make sure you know about it. I feel like Robert Saleh missed a trick by not sending Nathaniel Hackett out to do the post-game handshake with Sean Payton. Can you imagine if they'd sent Hackett out to just be like, smug face on, gives the handshake to Payton?
Yeah.
I mean, Payton was
Head coach Aaron Rodgers would do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Payton was blowing up at reporters when they got, blown out by Miami and 70 points, etc. And the reporter was just asking the question. Can you imagine if they'd sent Hackett out to shake hands with the dude who lit him on fire in the postseason?
Is this your idea, or did you see this?
No, it was me. I would have done that. I would have done that. Rodgers 100% would have done that.
You're that level of petty.
Oh, yeah.
Would have.
Robert Saleh rose above that. He apparently is not that level of petty.
Is this a worse coaching job for the Broncos than Nathaniel Hackett?
I mean, it is on defense, right? This is as bad on defense as Nathaniel Hackett's offense that was incapable of calling plays without getting delay of game.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, but on defense. The offense, in a funny twist of fate, is actually dramatically improved.
The offense is funny because, look, Jaleel McLaughlin is like a godsend for this offense, as is Marvin Mims, as we know, right? Two rookies, but McLaughlin has another 22-yard screen for a touchdown.
Yeah.
A 38-yard run in there, a scamper. He only had 9 carries for 68 yards. Like, keep feeding your playmakers the ball, man. I don't know. There was a point in this game where the Broncos just stopped moving the ball, and they continue to have these stretches where the offense kind of disappears for a little bit. But they did get into a comeback opportunity here, and Russell Wilson brought them back within 3 with a touchdown late in the fourth quarter. Had a fourth quarter comeback opportunity, and then it was strip sack and fumble 6 for the Jets to go up by 2 scores.
Yeah, the Jets defense just went nuts on that final drive. I mean, they were killing Russell Wilson. Okay,
Jermaine Johnson tracked him down, forced the fumble.
And that was one of those forced fumbles where, it's a good defensive play. They're getting pressure. Russ, it's one of those plays where you can't really make it if you're the quarterback. You know the pressure's coming. You're trying to outrun it. You don't outrun it. And in addition to not outrunning it, you let them get their hand on the ball and knock it out as well. It's like that's kind of a cardinal sin for a quarter. It's a Daniel Jones play, right? It's a standard Daniel Jones play. He's getting chased down. And in addition to getting the negative play, the sack or the tackle, you also drop the ball.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, there are times, and look, the Jets defense has a track record now. They made Josh Allen look pretty bad, and they made Mahomes have one of his worst passing games. But there was just points in this game where Russ is just sitting there like deer in headlights in the pocket. So there's either nowhere to go or he's not feeling it, whatever it was. But credit the Jets defense, man. They made a ton of plays. And then credit, I mean, you've got the Broncos rushing stat, but Breece Hall, got the explosive plays back. I know he's not going to run for a 72-yarder all the time, but he seems to have a knack for those big runs. And in the Zach Wilson era, where again Wilson made a few nice plays, but overall, he's not playing great. He didn't play great in this game.
And this was a more standard Zach Wilson game,
I
think.
Against a bad Broncos defense, right?
Yes.
So it's not great coming off the Sunday night deal.
But
he made a few plays down the stretch. But Breece Hall, 177 yards, including the 72-yarder, is huge.
Breece Hall looks fantastic, and people you got to remember he's coming back off an ACL. So even though he was good to go week 1, they had him on a pitch count, and he probably wasn't 100%. It stands to reason that the longer this goes, the better Breece Hall is going to look, and the closer to the rookie Breece Hall, where remember, he was the guy in pole position for Rookie of the Year before he got hurt, and then Garrett Wilson kind of stepped into that space. I think Breece Hall is going to look really good throughout the course of this year. And remember, the Jets' offensive line is still wrecked. It was bad to start with. Guys are getting hurt. Billy Turner and Max Mitchell were in this game. It's a rough spot to be in, which not only does it impact Breece Hall, but that contributes to Zach Wilson not being good as well. Let's give the guy a break. He's not working behind the best offensive line in the NFL. But this was a game where I missed some of the start of it. and then like check in on the Jets offense. We're 3rd and 21, and Zach Wilson tries to execute a screen, just holds the ball and gets sacked. It's like, oh yeah, okay. So this is still what we're doing, is it? And this is what the offense is going to look like. And then they're driving to get points before halftime and just can't even spike the ball in time. It's like
there was a lot of ugly football.
Yes,
for a while in this one. Buff punt and then that screw up, right?
Yeah, Marvin Mims with a muff punt. That's not.
Oh, so there was
not helping.
Mims muffed a punt. Then the Jets muffed a punt, and the Broncos come back and run a trick play where they fumble. The whole thing's just bad.
Bryce Huff, I told you this before we went on, has one of the weirdest stat lines I can remember seeing from an edge rusher. 19 pass rushes, 8 pressures, which is a pressure rate of 42%. But a pass rush win rate of just 15.8% because half of those pressures are cleanup plays. So not actually wins when it comes to beating your blocker, but simply getting pressure because somebody got forced in your direction or the offensive lineman's leverage was taken away, or you pursued him late in the play. I don't remember a line like that before. But Bryce Huff continues to be like maybe the best situational pass rusher in the NFL in terms of actually getting production.
Yeah, he's very good. And it was Jermaine Johnson, like I said, he had the game-clinching strip sack, and he had a big game with 2 sacks and the best win rate on the Jets at 25%. So I think that's part of the Jets, too. Johnson had not rushed the passer at that level to this point this year, but he's capable, former first-round pick, and just don't know when you're going to get that type of performance. So the Jets' defense is keeping him alive.
The Jets' defense was fantastic. I thought Russell Wilson, again, looked noticeably more athletic than previously. This was closer to old Russell Wilson. And, this wasn't the best game he's had. In part, that fumble at the end is a really bad play. But he was going up against the Jets' defense, which is the opposite end of the scale from Zach Wilson going up against the Broncos' defense. Wilson looked pretty good again. Jerry Jeudy, I thought, had a pretty impressive game. Cortland Sutton randomly didn't have a catch until the 2-minute warning in the game. And then Zach Wilson, remember last week everyone was going nuts over every throw he had for 2 drives was perfect location. It always felt more accidental than by design, in terms of, he isn't that accurate. So if he's doing that 8 times in a row, there's probably a degree of luck involved in that. This game, he ends up throwing an interception because he had the opposite problem. He threw the ball basically to the wrong location inside at Patrick Surtain instead of outside to Garrett Wilson on a play, which again just makes me think that wasn't really in his control when he caught the high end of everyone was perfect.
That was a nice interception.
Yeah, it was a nice interception, but it was one of those plays that's only on the table because the ball location was bad.
Left it inside for sure. Then when the Jets needed big plays, Tyler Conklin with a big 37-yarder, looking like Gronk down the field.
I love you with your anti-rugby hate. What I love is that play, you get the catch, you get the rumble yards after the catch by the tight end, then you generally get the receivers join in to try and the rolling maul. The receivers join in to start adding their weight, and then if the play lasts long enough, the linemen make it. There's 2 or 3 linemen that were watching the play and going, oh, we can get to that. If we run now, we'll get there before he stopped. Let's go. Saddle up, boys. So that play was one of those ones where it lasted long enough, and then right at the end, 3 offensive linemen piled in, and now we've got a rolling maul, baby.
Just pushing Zach Wilson's passer rating forward is what they're doing.
Yep.
Pushing it forward.
Pushing EPA.
Pushing more EPA into the play. EPA, infallible stat. All right, let's go 2 more games here. Kansas City Chiefs 27, Minnesota Vikings 20. Chiefs move to 4-1. Vikings fall to 1-4. Oh, another 1-score game for the Vikings here. I didn't realize that.
Yep.
Kirk Cousins did have a Hail Mary. He had a drop back for a potential Hail Mary at the end of the game.
Didn't in fact have the Hail Mary. Didn't get that
he
far.
locked in the 90-plus passer rating with the sack, however, and Chiefs come away with the victory.
Yeah. This was this was all Minnesota in terms of like every narrative they have was in this game. The Kirk Cousins Hail Mary that didn't actually happen thing protected his stats. They fumbled the ball away, I think, on the first play.
First offensive play, Josh Oliver fumbles it.
Like 10 seconds. That's now 8 lost fumbles in the season. Assuming they didn't have more in the rest of the game. Were they good for the rest of the game? Insane numbers. Just wild stuff. Alexander Mattison drops what was almost certainly a touchdown on a screen late in the game that would have tied it, I think. The touchdown that they never ended up getting.
Man, that was a beautiful play. Chris Jones, I mean, you're inviting pressure, and then Chris Jones is in there in like 0.5 seconds, and Cousins just flips it over him. And Madison had a lot of space and blockers setting up.
And Alexander Mattison is having a bad season. And I want to be careful because the guy has taken like a ridiculously uncalled for abuse, like on social media, racist abuse, like horrific things that shouldn't not be thrown towards a player, no matter how bad he is playing or what he's doing. But Madison is having a rough year in his opportunity to be the lead back after Dalvin Cook gets traded away. That didn't help. That would have been a touchdown that essentially tied the game, the tying score that the Vikings never ended up getting in the game. So really rough play for him.
I mean, it is. There are some. We're not going to spend the whole show here. There's some interesting narratives about, hey, running backs are the most replaceable, and just like the Vikings have an active strategy to not invest at running back, basically, and just say, hey, let's man up. And you could there are some people making the case for the Giants and how inept they look. Well, they do look that much better when they have Saquon Barkley. There are some interesting use cases out there about teams falling apart a little bit without their star running back, or perhaps when they just kind of neglect the position. I don't want to get into that too much today. But the other big story coming out of this one, Justin Jefferson, hamstring injury. He was not on the field at the end of the game for the Vikings when they were trying to make their comeback.
2 big injuries.
And then the Travis Kelce injury to start.
Yeah, Jefferson looked like he strained a hamstring. That's bad for a guy as good as him. We talked a lot about hamstrings already on the show between us and Vic at the Friday show, but arguably the best receiver in the NFL having a hamstring problem is catastrophic for Minnesota. Having said that, really good game from Jordan Addison, who ends up essentially being the number one receiver in the game between Jefferson being kept reasonably quiet before he got hurt and then being hurt and not being on the field. Addison looked fantastic. Great route running, good speed, had some nice moves after the catch, even if ultimately once the first guy got to him, he tended to be stopped because he weighs 17 pounds. Addison is looking look, Puka Nacua existed, so anybody's wide receiver rankings are off. I'm pretty sure nobody had Nacua as number one in the entire draft, but Addison was my favorite of the big three, and so far that's looking legit.
The big three being Addison, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Zay Flowers.
Quentin Johnson would have
Quentin Johnson and then Zay Flowers.
Right.
Well, because a lot of
big
people
four.
had Zay in
or call him Big Four. Either way, Addison was my favorite.
Of the first rounders. Of those guys in the first round.
I mean, he was the third receiver taken. And of the first round guys, he's looking like the most immediate production from them.
So the Travis Kelce injury, I mean, it looked bad at first because his reaction, right? And especially when you're watching.
Well, it's classic, like, non-contact injury is always a red flag.
Non-contact. He fired his helmet. I don't know, man. The Chiefs have I don't know what they have in the locker room at halftime. Remember Mahomes last year in the playoff? Like, they're either very dramatic in Kansas City. Or they got some good stuff in the locker room. Mm-hmm. Because Mahomes could barely walk in the first half of the playoff game last year. He just comes back and says, yeah, I'm good.
And
Kelce did the same thing. Everybody's like, is it Achilles? Is he done for the season? It's really bad. He can barely walk off the field. And he's like, I've got my helmet on, ready to go.
Now, to be fair, all of the medical Twitter people almost universally said exactly the same thing, which is that's just a low ankle sprain. It's not a problem. They'll tape it up. He'll be back. Like, it was everybody else who doesn't know what they're doing, like us, who looked at it and were like, his Achilles is gone. That's catastrophic. I honestly think announcers, I think broadcasts need to put a medical guy in the booth so that when that happens, instead of going, well, let's not speculate, let's send it down to whoever who's going to ask a coach who's going to tell her nothing, like, we can actually go, don't worry about it, guys. That's a low ankle sprain.
I saw your take yesterday on that. I saw some of the criticism of it too, right? Because the rules expert, like, the rules are pretty black and white, right? Like, this is a catch. This is not. They're supposed to be, right? the injury analyst would have to go out there and be like, here's the range of outcomes, right?
But
it's a
don't.
knee injury. The MRI could say ACL, or it could say MCL. It could be 3 weeks, or it could be the season.
If you watch them, though, they don't. Like, they're very, very good at actually looking at the tape and being able to tell you that generally is the mechanism for this specific thing, and that creates generally this outcome, which is a 4 to 6 week timetable. Like, you don't tend to see that many examples of them saying, don't worry about it, guys, that's a low ankle sprain. It's like, actually, it turns out it's an ACL, he's done for the year. Or even vice versa. Guys, that looks catastrophic, and it turns out it's only a bruise. You know what I mean? Their accuracy seems to be pretty good, and even if it isn't, who cares? What's the downside? It's not like they're like taking the TV dude's medical diagnosis and running with it behind the scenes. Like, I think you gain by simply, instead of 20 minutes of bullshit speculation by the people who have no idea what they're doing and the reporter who's trying to find something out that's not going to get told anything useful, you get an immediate, that's probably a low ankle sprain, they'll tape it up, he'll be back.
Yeah.
All good. I will say that's one thing that was conspicuously missing, your point on the Netflix documentary with the Mahomes and his Jordan game with the ankle in the playoffs. It's like they take him away, he goes, gets an x-ray, and then he comes back with his ankle taped up, and we never find out if there was any, lozenges consumed to potentially take the edge off that.
Just saying that, like, Kelsey did not look limited at all.
No.
In the second half, and including, so a couple of the big plays in this game, right? I always look at it from the perspective of, if you're trying to beat the Chiefs, who are the best team in the NFL, right? For the foreseeable future, year in, year out, they're the team to beat overall. And if you're trying to beat the Chiefs, how do you do it? The Vikings actually sacked Mahomes a couple times. He doesn't take those negative plays.
Yeah.
But he comes back on a 2nd and 18, throws a beautiful pass to get the first down to get it back. You get him in 3rd and 18, or again, whatever it was, blitz him, get him under pressure. He chucks it up. Now, just getting the ball out there was incredible. Defender gets his hand on the ball. Justin Watson, these are the plays that I thought were huge. Justin Watson wins at the catch point, right? So you have a 33-yard play on 3rd and 18. Impressive that Mahomes gets the ball out there. Most of the time that's probably tipped away, but Justin Watson wins at the catch point. You have another 3rd and 8, I believe it was, after Kelsey's injury. You throw it up. Defender has his arms in between the ball, and actually after the ball comes down to the ground, takes the ball away from Kelsey. They review it. It's a catch. Kelsey had it, hits the ground, finished the catch. They called it a catch. I thought they were going to call it incomplete.
I think that should have been a turnover. I think the reason they didn't call it a turnover was simply because they didn't want it to be a turnover. So my argument would be, if he simply rips that ball out instead of takes it away, they call that an incomplete. Like, he ripped it out so quickly after them going to the ground that they would have called that you didn't have the ball for long enough. That's
for sure.
Pass. But because he took it away, they're like, well, it can't be a turnover. Like, he had it in possession and hit the turf. It's got to be a catch. Like, the fact that he was able to actually complete taking it fully away is what made them go, that can't be a turnover. If he'd ripped it out, we'd have called it incomplete.
Right. So
because he actually got hold of it himself, that's too big a swing. We can't call that a turnover. I think they genuinely balked on saying that's a full turnover by Metellus.
That's where the rules thing is weird, right? Because you're absolutely right. If Metellus rips the ball out and it hits the ground, we've been since the Calvin Johnson touchdown, right? And since Des Bryant, we'd be saying, well, he didn't complete the catch.
Right. Now,
but I heard
the line has moved. Like, you don't have to hold on to it for like a week and a half like Calvin Johnson did back in the day. Like, they've shortened that time scale rather, but this would still be within the period where that was so quickly after he hit the ground. If that ball had come out there, they would have called it incomplete and not even thought about it.
I agree. I really think so too. But what the phrase they said, well, he hit the ground, therefore the play's dead when he hits the ground.
We know that it is.
But we don't, right? But you have to finish.
Yeah.
So then it became, did Kelsey hold the ball long enough while on the ground? But at the same time, you obviously can't have a receiver on the ground being touched and just rip the ball away from him. So it really is the fact that the ball never hit the ground that I think changed the play.
But logically, they've essentially just said that the period he had it is not long enough to have held it for it to be a completed catch if the ball came out. But we've decided it's long enough to give him the catch because the alternative in this scenario is an actual turnover, and that feels like the worst option. It's actually interesting. They've done the one thing that the NFL is always at absolute pains to prevent happening, which is they've effectively used common sense to say the most fair outcome on this play is this is a catch because the alternative is it's an interception. And they basically determined that in the booth, which on the one hand I applaud because I think they need to use more common sense when they're doing this stuff. On the other hand, I think if you're actually applying the rules, that's a turnover.
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting one. The other call that I didn't like, I'm trying to find the spot in the game, when Kansas City went for the fourth down and they had the underthrown pass interference, which I hate generally. Where was that? 4th and 1, Kansas City on Minnesota's 48. So they're up by 1 score, and this is what put them up by 2 scores. 4th and 1, they go for it on the Minnesota 48, 6:05 left in the game, in the third. And Mahomes kind of throws it up, and they call defensive pass interference, and they showed one replay and just brushed past it. I didn't think there was contact. I didn't think there was much contact. It was underthrown and it hit the defender. I could be off on that. I didn't like that call at all. But it's a 31-yard penalty. And again, I'm thinking of it through the lens of if you need a lot of things to go right when you face the Chiefs. And you give the Chiefs credit for these plays, right? You have Justin Watson making that play that I mentioned, Travis Kelce making that play at the catch point. But this one, underthrown pass interference for 31 yards, like if you're trying to pull the upset against the Chiefs, you kind of need those to go in your way.
Yeah, and the Chiefs,
I thought it was kind of a weak pass interference call.
Right. The Chiefs, remember, are this interesting team where in the exact opposite end of the double cheek push thing, they don't like running sneaks because they won't put Patrick Mahomes under center since he injured himself doing that. So all of their 4th and short plays are some form of trickery or pass because they won't just pile straight up the middle.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what's better than double cheek push is a 31-yard pass interference.
Well, yeah.
And that was a big part of what won the game for the Chiefs. 27-20, they get the win. They turn around quickly here, and they've got the Broncos this Thursday night as double-digit favorites at home against the lowly Broncos. All right, let's go Sunday Night Football. Niners, 42. Cowboys, 10.
More
dominant
points.
Outing.
More points that Dallas has conceded in this game than they had in the previous games combined.
Wow, stretch every single anti-Cowboys narrative has been stoked. The fire's stoked under all of them. It's funny because, look, Dak Prescott didn't play well. He ends the game with 3 interceptions. That had nothing to do with the outcome of the game, the actual interceptions. The Niners were just dominant, and the story has to be that offense and Brock Purdy at the helm running it. Not only was he just the facilitator in this one, I thought Brock Purdy was just outstanding in this game.
Yeah, Purdy was fantastic. I mean, the 49ers across the board were fantastic in this game. I mean, it came out, they immediately executed on offense. You thought, okay, maybe it's going to be a game where offense actually has success, but Fred Warner with a perfect peanut punch to knock the ball out. We talked about that a little bit before on Tony Pollard. San Francisco recover. Right. And then that started to set the tone of the game. The 49ers were having success. They weren't getting stopped by Dallas's defense. The defense showed up every now and again with a big play or a big hit or just something, this to show that is actually a pretty legit unit, albeit banged up. But every time the Dallas Cowboys offense got the ball, nothing happened. The 49ers found a way of just stuffing them, shutting them down, getting a turnover, whatever it was. And then everything just started to go San Francisco's way. And eventually, we reached a point where the Dallas defense felt like they reached that stage where the Broncos got to against the Dolphins, where they just wanted out. They just wanted out of that game. Their offense couldn't get it. It was ugly.
I mean, it wasn't like the Niners got up 14-0, but Dallas is a good team. So you knew that they'd be able to punch back at least a little bit, and they tried. They did.
They got that one bomb to Turpin, but that was basically their game.
It was a great pass, Dak to Turpin, 26 yards, beautiful, and Turpin ends up getting hurt later. But the Niners were just too tough, man. They were just too good on both sides. The defense was flying around. Every time Dak left the pocket, they were tracking him down, whether it was Fred Warner, Drake Greenlaw. They're just fast, man. And their pass rush, outstanding against Dallas. And then, Dallas just didn't look like they had enough dynamic answers, whereas everything the Niners do looks dynamic. Brandon Ayuk running through space. And then they had that stretch where Brock Purdy is just precision. I mean, the people were describing it as he just makes good decision after good decision after good decision. And in this game, he did. He absolutely did. I mean, everything, not only that, but just putting the ball where it needed to be. I thought his best throw was negated by a penalty through a deep out to Ayuk where he just put it right on him. But he was carving up the Cowboys' zone coverage, throwing exactly where it needed to be. Then on top, again, this is where like everything's good, right? They dialed up the same play we mentioned for the Lions, the George Kittle, flea flicker. George Kittle gets behind the defense for a 38-yard touchdown. So you're calling good plays. Brock Purdy's executing. Andy's accurate. And, oh, by the way, Ayuk and Debo and McCaffrey and Kittle, good luck covering all those guys. And the defense is a house from start to finish. It's just Niners look really good.
Yeah, they were phenomenal. I mean, this was one of the best games Brock Purdy has ever had, really. Forget whatever the baseline statistics look like. This was one of his best performances in any single game, where, again, he was doing a lot. He was making a lot of really nice throws, in addition to the fact that everything Shanahan dials up is gold. I mean, the guy has the Midas touch right now, and even a team like Dallas. And this was, I think, an interesting reflection of how you attack this offense that's unstoppable right now. And they talked about it a bit. Chris was talking about it on the broadcast. Like, Dan Quinn essentially said he would rather have a bad matchup in personnel terms than a bad schematic matchup and change what you're doing to try and attack this offense. I kind of feel like that's the wrong way of doing it. I think you have to go the opposite approach, and even if it's not what you do particularly well, try and do what beats this offense instead of just saying, no, we're going to match up our guy against your guy because their guy's better. It just is. It doesn't matter how good your defense is. Their guy is George Kittle and Debo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and Kyle Juszczyk and Christian McCaffrey, and you don't have that. You don't. Even if you have one or two guys, you don't have the depth. You can't go deep into your bench because eventually they're going to find the guy that does match up well with whoever you've got, and you lose. And we saw that in this game. The 49ers prodded around a bit and found where the matchups were beneficial. Christian McCaffrey didn't get much going early in this game. They were shutting that down. And then they just found where the weakness was and hammered that until you keeled over. And it worked.
Niners have a lot of answers, man. They have a lot of answers. Yeah, it was impressive. It was impressive from start to finish. I don't know what else to say. I think you're right. It may have been the very best Brock Purdy game, which I'm not here to tear him down. We're always trying to bring perspective here, right? Because the baseline for a lot of people is 9 touchdowns, no picks, perfect, 190,000 passer rating or whatever it is. But on prime time, we saw the best Brock Purdy. My prediction was that Christian McCaffrey would come out of this game with MVP hype, but it's going Purdy's way.
You got to wonder what that is. Most normal people do not just die in the regular course of speaking. And yet this has got to be time number 4, 5 on the podcast. Now, we've been going for a while, but still. I feel like most people don't just seize up and choke themselves to death in the course of articulating a sentence. You alive?
I just need to take a little walk.
Yeah.
The residual from last week has been like a little cough.
Mm-hmm.
Sitting here for 2.5 hours, I think it's been building up.
That just set the recovery bank?
No, we still have voice is fine. It's just probably need to cough it out a little bit here.
Yeah.
So Purdy was awesome.
Yeah.
In this game.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I just try to find I don't want to take away from the Purdy story. He's the last pick in the draft, 7th rounder, and he looks like the perfect fit for Kyle Shanahan's offense. First touchdown, scramble drill, finds George Kittle. This is what I'm saying. There is a combination of Kyle Shanahan's got some touchdowns in there, The playmakers have some touchdowns in there. Brock Purdy's creating them. The Niners have multiple ways to win offensively.
Yeah.
Purdy's one of them.
No, it was. I mean, Dallas tried to hang in there early. You know, they with the play to Turpin was great. I forget who it was. Who was the Dallas safety that basically stopped the touchdown by not just tackling Christian McCaffrey one-on-one in the hole, but like taking the ball off him on the way down.
Forced a fumble. Was it Wilson?
Might have been, but that was like that's a 7-point play.
Yeah.
Like he stops a touchdown by being the last guy there to stop him running in, but also on the way down just takes the ball away from him. Like that's a phenomenal individual defensive play. And that's what I mean. Like the Dallas defense was swinging early. They were overmatched. Like they were I think that the game plan wasn't good. The Dallas players tried their hardest initially, and then it just became apparent quite quickly, and the further the game progressed, that they were simply overmatched on both sides of the ball, and eventually they gave up swinging. Like they swung everything, they'd given everything they had. It was like a boxer, that gives his best shot, and the dude just takes it and keeps on walking. And you're like, uh-oh, now we're in trouble. That's what happened to Dallas.
Yeah, it also wasn't. Sometimes you oversimplify, and it's like, well, the Niners won in the trenches. Like they actually got some pressure.
Yeah.
On Purdy and everything. It wasn't this dominant start-to-finish outing where the Cowboys couldn't get off a block or they couldn't do anything. Like, they got pressure, but that's where the Purdy game comes up. He goes 5 for 9 for $128 and 2 touchdowns under pressure, including that first one, 2 big-time throws. It's all a factor in this one.
Yeah, and they're, I mean,
oh, gosh.
Dallas's or San Francisco's pass rush was a really important part of this game. Dallas's pass protection didn't hold up the way it needed to. I mean, Terrence Steele against Nick Bosa was a mismatch. We talked before about what it was going to look like. Micah Parsons going up against, your choice of opponents. Are you going to go against Trent Williams and create one of the most fascinating one-on-one matchups of the season? Or are you going to spend your time against Colton McKivitz and have production? And he played like almost 2-to-1 snaps against Trent Williams. Why? What's the point? I would take the easy matchup. Put somebody else over the other side if he's going to. And Trent Williams was phenomenal. Like, he ended up basically shutting down Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons had a couple plays where he was a factor. And outside of that, Trent Williams basically contained him. It's like that kind of just feels like a waste of Micah Parsons.
It is one of the, if I had Bob Stern back here again, I thought we had a really fun interview with him on Thursday's show. Go check it out if you haven't yet, even though it's leading into this game. It's still like a lot of really good insight there, just football generally. We had heard stuff about the Cowboys, and I don't know if this comes, my question would be, does this come from Jerry Jones? That when Jason Garrett was there was this idea that like, oh, we're the Cowboys. We just line up and win. We'd heard those rumblings, say, coming out of the building. And I don't know if that's like a Jerry Jones from the top thing or if it was just Garrett. But it's kind of like what you're describing here, and where it's like, oh, we just do what we do. And, Micah Parsons is going to rush against Trent Williams. Like, that's our matchup. You go win your matchup. When at some point, that can win in a lot of games. There's a lot of games where you're the better team. But when you're going up against the Niners, when you are the underdog, you might have to find edges.
And also, there are some times where it's kind of a 50-50 proposition, right? The tackles are vaguely equal. But in a situation where you've got, like, on the one side, you've got the best left tackle in the game, and on the other side, you've got a kind of a liability, it just seems too obvious. Like, Nick Bosa on the other side is a slightly less extreme example of the same kind of idea. Bosa spends kind of 2-to-1 snaps on the left side, right? Generally, over the course of a season. He's going to play more on the left side than the right side. In this game, he basically spent every snap on the left side because he was beating Terrence Steele, and the other side is Tyron Smith, who's still one of the best left tackles in the game. So why would you bother going to the other side? The Cowboys should have been doing that with Micah Parsons, going, if we put him against Colton McKivitz, he wins every snap. If we could put him against Trent Williams, he almost never wins. So why try?
Yeah. Anything else on the Niners, man?
They look
great.
They look like the best team in the NFL right now. Kyle Shanahan's a wizard. He's got the Midas touch. Brock Purdy played like Brock Purdy doesn't need to play like Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson for this team to be amazing. If he plays like this, which is like a slight step down, but is still the best version of him we've ever seen, I don't know who's stopping this team. I mean, we talked about whether this game means anything because of the dynamic between these two teams, in the playoffs over the last few years. All it did was give Dallas the kind of reality check of, like, this is the standard. If you expect to actually win playoff games and go to a Super Bowl, this is what you need to get past. And whether it's now or in January, you just got a very clear demonstration of how far off that pace you are.
I mean, from a Dallas standpoint, how can they just dominate bad teams and then lay an egg this badly against the best team? Are they that far behind? Niners have an interesting game against the Browns in Cleveland next week. Of course, they'll play the Eagles later in the season, December 3rd. I think we're all going to be pointing to that game. Just looking ahead really quick, I was looking at the Eagles' schedule. They have a run of games. So I don't think the Niners have as difficult a schedule as the Eagles as you battle for the number one seed here. The Eagles have a stretch of games. First off, they play the Dolphins in 2 weeks. And then there's a point where the Eagles play Dallas, the Chiefs, Bills, Niners, and then Dallas again. So 2 Cowboys games with the Chiefs, Bills, and Niners all mixed in. That's November and into December. It's going to be a fun little stretch for the Eagles and basically going to determine, I think, number one seed in the NFC. So just something to keep an eye on. Niners dominate, man.
Mm-hmm.
Look like a force.
Yep.
All right, let's get out of here before I choke again.
Good idea. Yeah, don't die.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Enjoy Monday Night Football tonight. Raiders and Packers. Sam will be here tomorrow to break it all down with Trevor, talk a little draft, I'm sure. I'll be back again on Wednesday. Thanks to everybody for tuning in.